welcome everyone. This is episode 2 of the Green Room podcast. I'm here with Citizen Black today. Sadly, we had a massive technical issue last time, which was last night when we did the interview. Audio didn't record on my end or didn't record on his end. I don't know if that's for the greater good or not. We talked some shit, about pedophiles and porn and very little to do with music, to be brutally honest with you. But that was kind of the conversation I was expecting. So welcome to the show, Citizen Black.
Take two. Just for some context there, we weren't talking about pedophiles and porn at the same time. They were actually two separate topics, just to give context there.
Yeah, no, that's definitely we keep those two things separate now, to be honest.
Yo, what's up, man? Thanks for having me again. The conversation we had the last time, it might have been too good for the listeners.
Yeah, it might have fucking really stunted the quality of future episodes for other people that might have just only talked about music and whatever they were working on. But I think that's kind of the conversation I was hoping to have. But, there's nothing stopping us from touching on various wild and wonderful things this time around again. The only part that I might rehash was kind of, maybe give us a little bit of an introduction into yourself. You don't have to fucking repeat and go over exactly the same stuff you talked about last time, but any little details behind yourself and your music and kind of what got you here today as an artist.
Yeah, I suppose it's just life, I came from not necessarily a musical household. Nobody in my family was in a band or making music or anything, but everybody was into music, and it was everybody in my household was into very different music, so it was kind of organically encouraged to find out what you're into and be into that. So I suppose exposure to loads of different kinds of music is what brought me to the dance, so to speak. But I think making rap music in particular has always been close to my heart, because I suppose I have a lot to say and I'm not particularly sociable, so I have a lot to express, and I don't always have a place to express it, so music became that place, you know, if that makes sense. And I think from other rappers and poets and vocalists and anybody that's kind of working with lyrics, they've kind of mirrored that back to me, because in order to kind of write vocals outside of a freestyle environment, which I think is definitely a milestone and a rite of passage for everybody that starts making rap music in particular. But I think most lyricists that I've met anyway do tend to spend a lot of time alone, because that's generally when you write lyrics,
Yeah, I find it very difficult now to write lyrics around people. I might be able to kind of go over a verse and give it a small layer of revision or something like that. Say if we're just if it's a cypher or something like that, someone's throwing a beat out there, so do you have a verse for this? Yeah, it's maybe I have to work it and stuff like that. But no, for me, for the most part, I have to be by myself, cup of tea, spliff, and no one else interrupting me, really.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a ceremony, do you know what I mean? And it's a ceremony that I actually got into, I suppose, relatively early in life, from the time I was a teenager, being at home and doing kind of fulfilling that exact ceremony that you just described of drinking tea and smoking, not even necessarily smoking weed, but smoking something. I think burning is definitely I don't know, some kind of subconscious ritual that definitely plays a part in my life anyway.
Write some lyrics
yeah, something you know what I mean, you kind of it's a weird one, and I mean, I know we're joking about it, but that is a real thing. Do you know what I mean? There have been a lot of great artists that were punctuating their time between making music by smoking crack and doing shit like that.
Jazz scene is fucking riddled with heroin, at least
big
back
time.
in the day. So it's me big personally, time. I don't think I could write much music on crack or heroin. I'd probably be in another world. But yeah, a few cups of tea, if you spliff some, fine.
Something some kind of ceremony, and then when you're in the habit of doing it, when it transcends pastime into career and or lifestyle, then you find yourself, you punctuate your time not only by making the music itself, but also you're punctuating that time then by the other kind of sub ceremonies in it. So what I mean is, it's right, I'm gonna write lyrics today. It's okay, so I kind of plan my day around the time that I'm gonna spend writing lyrics, everybody's kind of process is different. I actually write my lyrics while I'm doing other things. So I'll kind of, I suppose, set myself up to be in a situation where I have a lot of chores to do and I've got to cook something, and I have this 3 hours of doing other stuff where I can get these 2 verses down. You know?
You have more of a schedule
and
to
then
work around as
punctuating.
well, I guess. Like,
yeah, well, I do. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I always kind of did that anyway. You know, even before I was a parent, or you know, before I had loads of responsibility. I think it's because I don't actually write the lyrics down. That like for me to sit down and be passive to write lyrics feels quite unnatural.
Yeah.
You know, so I'd rather go for a cycle. You know, I go on a 60-70 kilometer cycle and write my verse that way. You know, which I know sounds kind of mad to other people.
Yeah, you
but
mentioned
like,
that yesterday.
Yeah, you got to be doing something.
It's
man.
not a very common activity for a rapper to kind of partake in, is going on big long cycles. You know what I mean?
It's not very gangster, I give you that.
No. Your street cred now is minus 50% now. Like, I'm hoping you've probably shot a few people out or something like this to back yourself up again. Like,
well, I don't know, dude. About a year ago, I did I think it was like about a 90 kilometer cycle from Dublin to Laois, and I went through a load of checkpoints, and it was lashing rain because you weren't supposed to go 5 kilometers from your house. So the funny thing is that, you know, in the modern day, going for a 90 kilometer cycle is actually, I don't know, it seems to get more of a gangster reaction than selling drugs, or
nearly,
you know,
like, at least at that particular time,
about,
like.
Yeah, it was pretty surreal, man. It was pretty surreal, but they didn't bat an eyelid, because they're like, you know, nobody's thinking, yeah, this dude is like 90 kilometers away from his house when he's cycling.
Why,
through a
shit,
checkpoint.
who would be at that? You know, that's what the guard would be thinking. Like.
Yeah, man. It was good. Yeah, it was an experience. Like, I got the train back. I'm not a complete psycho, but yeah, it was. I mean, I didn't do it to. I wasn't an act of rebellion. Like, when I did it, like, I had something to do, and it was 90 kilometers away. So, you know, I didn't really feel like having to deal with the fucking, like, the Demolition Man style hellscape that is fucking getting on public transport. So I said, fuck that shit, and I hollered at 3030, that's my bike's name, and we fucking loaded up the bag, and we went on our way. It was good.
Fuck it, why not, man? You know, if you're physically capable of doing it, why not? You know, go for it. It's the way I see it. Like, I tend to walk as much as I possibly can, like, everywhere, because I don't have a car, and I kind of, where I live, like, if I want to get the bus, I have to walk 30 minutes regardless. Like, so I got used to it as a teenager, because it was definitely something that my old lad kind of thought, oh, he won't go out if I don't give him a lift. He won't walk that distance. I was like, fuck you, man, I'll walk this distance, I don't care. And now, like, a 2-hour walk to me, like, while it may not always be like, oh, I'd love to do a 2-hour walk at 2 a.m, but, like, if I have to do it, I'll do it. Like, I don't care. Save myself money. And
it's strange.
Actually,
like,
probably the only way I've kept fit, because I don't play sports anymore, and it's all kind of music and, you know, a bit of an unhealthy lifestyle, I guess, with drinking weed and all that shite. So it's something to balance it out a bit.
There's definitely a crossover between, like, the unhealthy lifestyle and working with anything creative. So, you know, whether it's like walking a long distance or cycling a long distance, or, you know, anything that's like where you're pushing the boundaries physically, especially sober, I think can create a better balance.
Yeah.
You know, in the long term, because there is a big crossover with, like, I know I do hear and see a lot of artists talking about mental health and that kind of stuff, and I think a lot of the time we look at the symptoms, like, we look at the symptoms in the micro instead of looking at the macro and being like, well, you know, there's a big crossover between an unhealthy lifestyle, unhealthy physically, emotionally and spiritually, with doing anything creative. You know what I mean? You become a creature of the night, and you're eating shit food,
exercise,
and you're
health,
looking at a screen the whole time.
Smoking,
you're not exercising.
Shot,
Exactly, yeah. So I think maybe focusing on that might be like a quicker way to solve the psychological issues if we try and, you know, have a look at the physical.
Get out in nature,
first,
like, you know, at the very least, go out to a lake or fucking just go for a walk or something like that. Get away from everything.
Big time.
You know, take the
it's hard though,
cassette
man.
player instead of the phone, like.
Yeah, it's hard though. Like, I think we touched on it yesterday. Like, we're living in a time where the main currency is likes and follows. You know, so it can be hard to find that. It can be hard to find that quiet time, you know, because no matter how enlightened you think you are, there is always this kind of
distraction,
low key pressure to. Yeah, it's a distraction, and it's also a pressure to, like, if you're an artist, to seem active.
Definitely,
do you know what I mean? So like, I'm in a fortunate situation that, like, you know, I'm fulfilled in my own life, so I don't feel like, and also I think I only joined Instagram in like 2016 or something. You know what I mean? So I was like fully grown when I first got onto it, so I don't feel those same pressures to like keep up appearances or whatever, or like, you know, and I know it is to my own detriment as well. Like, I'm not great at promoting music and stuff like that, but I think it's because I haven't fully assimilated to that culture of, you know, likes and follows.
Yeah, you didn't really grow up with it necessarily, you know? Like when you were in your teens,
big time,
which would have been probably what, the early 2000s or so, like that wasn't a thing really, you know what I mean? Like Bebo, MySpace were maybe, you know, a few people were on that, like, you know, it wasn't really till I was probably in my late teens that social media was something that everyone had. Like, I mean, you still had maybe half your year in school that wasn't on Facebook or whatever, you know. So like, it's only really like maybe the generation beneath me where it's like they've had it at all times and grown up with it, and they don't know any life outside of it, you know what I mean? So they're gonna be naturally a bit more tech savvy than myself and yourself as time goes on, when they're picking it up just like that, you know what I mean? Even at this point, I'm struggling with like TikTok and like just all these new updates to Instagram and Facebook and all this shit. It was like, it wasn't broken. Why the fuck did you have to fix it? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I remember star ratings on YouTube and all that shit. Like, you know, back in the day, like, it was just perfect. Why did you have to change it? You know what I mean? But I guess it's just the way things work, I guess, you know.
Well, I think no matter how much you try to fight it, it's inevitable. It's like once you hit 25, you're like, these darn kids, you know what I mean? It's like everything becomes strange and new to you. It's like a year and a half ago you knew what was up, and now you don't know what the fuck is going on. And the only way to kind of overcome that is to accept it. And also like I'm very fortunate. There's a good few people that I make music with that are like about 10 years my junior, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, and my younger sister as well is 7 years my junior. So like there is younger people around me that kind of keep me like somewhat aware of what's going on
up and down the
with
stairs,
the contemporary artists. Yeah, well, in terms of what the fuck is going on, like, you know, musically, you know, I don't know. I was telling you before, man, I'm that dude. I'm like, when people are naming Irish artists or like, I don't know, drill rappers and stuff, I don't know who those guys are. I don't know who anyone is. So, so when I hear it, it's just like,
I didn't say it. Like a lot of rappers and producers are like that. Like, I'd say there's probably only like 3 or 4 rappers I know where I can just mention any name. I would find myself to be someone who knows virtually everyone that's in the scene, whether personally or just what they're doing or whatever. Like, but the majority of people, like 9 times out of 10, wouldn't know who I'm on about. Like, it's like, I think it's like people kind of tend to be, they stick with their scene, and maybe, you know, they'd be aware of people like Versatile and Kneecap and whatever, Costello, because it's kind of hard to not be aware of them. But outside of that, they will know virtually no one. So it's not really something that you should feel is unique to you. Like, it's pretty common. Like, on one side, it's just people who are, you know, as you're in your position where you're just busy and you're doing other things and you don't have the time. And there's other people that they don't want to, you know. It's kind of like, fuck that guy, I don't want to listen to his music, you know. Why would I want to even fucking tune into him? So like, it's a bit of an issue, but it's not something as well that, like, you know, should be stigmatized for either. Like, if it's just a case of that you're kind of focusing on yourself and all that, you know.
Well, that's actually quite reassuring to hear that I'm not the only one who's in the dark. You know, even between what the exact difference between drill and trap is, I don't even want to begin to think about that. But it is disappointing to hear that, you know, that there is people that are actively not listening to other artists. That's a strange move to take, I think, as an artist yourself.
Like, the only new music that I really tune into is Irish hip hop for the most part, like, or other, like, out of hip hop, ignore hip hop, other genres, yeah, I'll explore them and stuff, but new music is like almost primarily Irish hip hop from all sides of the country, and it's pretty cool how it's progressed in the last couple of years, where it kind of used to just be Dublin, Cork, Limerick and the north. Now it's kind of, you've got guys from Laois and Clare and Galway and every fucking county now. So it's cool how the scene is really blown up and expanded, and like in some senses might be oversaturated, but I'll say for the most part, as someone who tunes into a lot of what's going on, I would say that the majority of it is good quality. Like, there's, you know, solid stuff and there's great stuff. It's not very often I hear something like, Jesus, that's atrocious, like. And usually it's kind of like, I'm pretty sure he did that on purpose, do you know what I mean? So I wouldn't hold it against him and all that. So Yeah, it's
That's brilliant, man. That's really good to hear, because when I started, there was very much still that stigma that like rap music or hip hop wasn't taken seriously as like a credible genre of music, you know. But that was like 18, 19 years ago, and now like, and I mean even at the time, like hip hop was dominating the charts, but you know, but now people's mas listen to Kanye and shit.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Time goes on. You know what I mean? Like I remember one of my teachers saying
crazy,
when
yeah.
I said I listened to Eminem, she was like, "You listen to Eminem?" I'm like, "Yeah." Like, why? Like, it's like I was like, "I listen to Eminem." I'm like, "Yeah, but you're like a decade older than me. Like, that's not that. Like, Eminem's still around. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah. Like, there's probably parents that are 30, 40 now that are 50 Cent, Eminem, Nas fans in Ireland. You know what I mean? Whereas that probably wouldn't have been so much a thing. Like, the stigma is still kind of there in a sense, but I don't know. I think it just boils down to the accent, and people just kind of, it's Irish people kind of, they've got a begrudging kind of attitude toward each other. Like, I'll say straight out that some of the best rappers in the world that I've ever heard are from Ireland. Like, there's not many of them, but there's a nice handful there where I'm like, that guy is as good as some of my favorite rappers in America and the UK. And it's sad that like people don't recognize it necessarily, because they're just like, he's Irish, like he's from Dublin, I don't fucking hear that. And it's like, us as rappers and producers and stuff, we can acknowledge it straight off, like, but the average person might hear that and be like, put on a Drake song and they'd say like, that guy is way more complex than him. It's like, absolutely not, like, do you know what I mean? But I think it'll change. It's changed so much. Like, even when I first started, it wasn't that long ago really. I was about 18, I'd say, so about 7 years. Like, the reaction I would get from people now, like if I say I'm a producer or a rapper, is little or no reaction other than like, oh, that's cool, or like, oh yeah, wow, well, fair enough. Like, whereas before it would have been like, what the fuck? It's like, this fella's sick in the head. Like, it's like, in that small space of time, things have changed a lot. So I can only imagine in a decade, I personally think that the Irish scene, besides maybe the UK, will be the biggest scene in Europe in a couple of years even. I genuinely believe that. Maybe France as well, they're quite good, but outside of that, it's there for the taking. Like, America's naturally always going to be number one, I imagine, because it's so big and there's so many rappers, and they've got 30-40 years of history of hip-hop, whereas in some countries it's a decade or so. Mecca. But I truly believe that, like.
Well, for me anyway, it's gone from, telling people that you make rap music and they're saying, right, go on, do it then.
I hate that.
Or they laugh, or they just don't take it seriously. And then it's kind of elevated to like somebody saying, hey, I listen to your music and it's actually good. Like, the prefix of actually.
They got over that hump of like, I hope it's shit.
Yeah, that like, it's like that, I don't know, the prefix just suggests that like, if it's actually good, that means you assumed it would be shit.
Definitely get that a lot, yeah, sadly.
For me, that's definitely progress, from people just thinking that it was funny, or I think the main thing was, people, when you told people that you made rap music, they immediately assumed that you were talking about selling drugs, and
straight out of Compton, basically, like
all that kind of stuff, which, for the record, I do listen to, came up on that stuff, and I do love it.
Oh, same as.
I don't write that music because I don't live that lifestyle, so I think it would be disingenuous. I mean, even when I started making rap music, a lot of it was about getting into fights and doing drugs and that stuff, because I was actually doing that because, I was 17, 18.
Probably more on a grounded level, though, I imagine, like.
Well, it was.
You weren't saying you were shooting Mac 10s in Dublin City, like.
Yeah, well, of course not, because I wasn't, and if anything, it's weird. I actually had the pleasure, and I suppose, no, I won't say the displeasure, but of course it's always tough to, listen back to yourself when you're significantly younger.
Yeah.
But I did hear some of the music that we were writing like about 20 years ago quite recently, and in it I noticed a lot that I was calling rappers out for saying that they use guns, because according to the bars I was writing in whatever that was, 2002, 2003, I was saying, look, we're getting in scraps on the Nightlink every week and we're fighting with bare hands, so if you're using a gun, anybody can use a gun. I was like calling them out that they weren't hard enough, because it's easy to shoot a gun, but it's actually hard to get punched in the face.
Fact, yeah, that's
to retaliate to that.
Common enough analogy on it, like.
Well, I don't get in scraps anymore, so I don't.
I hope not. Yeah, I avoid all that shit as well myself. Like, I mean, I've had people who like claim to have listened to my music. Like one guy I remember said to me, like he was like, the beats are good and you can rap, but I just can't listen to the whole gangster fucking drug dealing shit. I'm like, what songs have you listened to that? Like the only song I think I've ever written about that stuff was a song called TikTok, which is like a petty song about fellas owing you tick like 50 fucking euro or 100 quid or something like that. But none of it was like, you know, I'm driving my Merc, gonna fucking shoot all these hoes down. It was just like, if you don't give me my fucking 50 quid, I'm gonna stab you with a spoon. Like, you know what I mean? Pure messing. Like, so I was like, dude, like, you know, what's blocking someone's mind there to listen to that and be like, oh god, man, you'd swear you were Tupac there on the tune. Like, it's like, fucking, it's the complete opposite. I'm trying to like make such a parody of myself that's like the total opposite of that. You know what I mean? Like, I do feel like that's the main thing that pushes people away, where they just assume like, so if you're a rapper, like you're obviously talking this and about that, like, because I've had people say like, you're from Barna, like where I grew up was very rural. It's fucking, it's quite well to do and posh now. Like it's fucking Mansionville. It's filled with a lot of fucking snobby people. And when I tell people now, like, oh, I'm a rapper and I grew up in Barna, they're like, what? Like, what the fuck do you have to rap about, man? You grew up in Barna. I was like, I'm not one of those cunts. Like, I'm pretty normal. Like, that's why I'm here with you. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so like, I've definitely, my credibility on some level has kind of been taken away in that aspect. But I'm kind of like, look, if you've got any questions about stuff I write about, because I tend to be very to a point in terms of reality and facts and stuff like that. It's like, just ask people if you don't believe that that's true or whatever like that. And it doesn't even mean in regards to stuff that's fucking, you know, over the top gangster shit, like nothing like that, but just regular enough stuff. It's like, because I think it might come off like a lot of my music doesn't make sense because I'm kind of so like personal about it. That's like, I make jokes and stuff in it that only like 5 people would even get. So I can imagine at some level, some of the stuff I made, like, what the fuck is he even on about? He's just talking gibberish. It's like, I'm literally like pouring exactly what's on my mind onto the page, rather than kind of what's the word, making it, like, softening it down, I guess, so that everyone can kind of take it in and understand what I'm talking about. Do you know what I mean?
Or making it accessible. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that, man. I have I don't know whether you'd say it's a good or it's a bad habit. I don't know. It's definitely a habit of mine though, where I do make a lot of reference to things that it's most likely very few people will actually understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I've been guilty of it quite a bit, actually, just making references to stuff that I know for a fact it's only going to be very few, sometimes no one will get it, you know, because it might not even be a direct reference. It might be a reference that is like tied up in some wordplay, so you'd have to actually be a fan of rap music and know this particular like little professional wrestling factoid from 1989 and have seen that other movie that I'm referencing and be from the north side of Dublin to have a fucking clue what I'm talking about. So
that's the beauty of it though, as well.
But I think
like,
not
if you do meet someone from a fucking, you know, on the other side, because it's happened to me once or twice, like met someone on the opposite side of the country I've never even met before, and he's like, I heard that song, man. I was like, were you on about this? I was like, yeah. I was like, oh man, I used to watch that as a kid. Like, it's like, no one else knew what I was on about.
It's beautiful when it happens. It's absolutely beautiful when it happens. But yeah, I make a point of, when I find myself doing it, like, I don't censor myself from doing it, because I think, you know, the more you kind of overthink lyrics, especially if they're personal lyrics, the more sanitized they are. So even if the flow is tighter or it's more accessible to more people, seeing as how credibility seems to be the thing that everyone within hip hop and rap music is searching for, then I think you should just say what's honestly on your mind, you know, even if the people don't get it.
Yeah, that's something I've always kind of wanted to do as well. Like, it's like if I do a song based on a certain emotion, especially stuff like sadness or anger, like, I try to make it sound as angry and depressing as possible, because I feel like a lot of music kind of, it's very vague. Like, you know, it doesn't depict emotions that are beautiful or ugly as beautiful or as ugly as they are, whether it's love or hatred or whatever, like, do you know what I mean? So I kind of really try to make it as ugly as possible, so that people can almost be half disgusted by it. But it's like, yeah, but like, you know, what are you like when you're fucking absolutely, you know, losing your fucking temper? It all happens to us at least once or twice, the odd times, you know what I mean? Like, so it's kind of like, I feel like I can't take it seriously half the time when people are saying, it's like, you don't really sound all that angry. Like, that's why songs like, say, Kim by Eminem, which is a good example, like, you know, he really sounds like he's literally, you know, kidnapping and murdering his fucking wife and losing his mind, and his heart's absolutely broken to pieces. Like, there's not a whole lot of songs that reach that level of, like, where it's you know, it's shocking us to hear it, like, and it's like, I can honestly picture and believe that this is happening fucking right now. Like, he possibly went through a story, 50% of it being true at some point, you know, with his wife. So it's kind of like I really try to achieve that, at least with lyricism. Don't tend to be a very kind of I tend to kind of be quite monotone and not fucking be too up and down with the emotions and stuff like that, the way I rap myself, like.
But the words themselves, but I mean, you know, it can be, it's, I don't know, if you try to capture like that emotion, you know, I think it's difficult to do.
Definitely.
You know, I think it's definitely something that has to come organically, you know. And once, if you write those lyrics from the heart, then, you know, when you perform them, then I think that always shows, you know. That's why I suppose you never kind of commented on how dope Drake's bars were, because you can sense that he didn't write them.
Oh yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I think you can always tell when somebody's being legitimate, you know. That's why DMX will always have a special place in my heart.
Definitely,
you know?
yeah.
You believe that dude. When you hear him say that shit, you really believe this dude. Like, and he was being, for the most part, he was like being very sincere in what he was saying. He was telling the truth, and you can sense that he's telling the truth.
Been through some shit in his life as well, from what I can gather, like.
Exactly, yeah. So you know, it's not just his tone or the words themselves. It's all of those things mixed together. You can tell that this is really this dude, you know, or at least this is really an artist representation of who this person really is, you know. So,
yeah, it's pretty.
I mean,
go on.
Go ahead. I make a point of, well, I don't have to try, you know. It's not something that I really think about, but I always tell the truth in everything that I'm writing, you know. No matter how elaborate it may be, it's always kind of based in some kind of truth. And I think that, for me anyway, that's the cornerstone of this like mythical credibility that every like hip hop artist is searching for. You know, it doesn't matter what you say. If you tell the truth, then I think people will receive you as credible regardless.
Yeah.
You know,
once you've kind of built up enough of a reach or a fan base where like people are actually paying attention to that shit, like, and actually looking into your music at some point and like reading into your lyrics, like any diehard fan would do if they're looking over MF Doom lyrics or GZA lyrics or something like that, trying to kind of analyze bits and pieces of it and figure out, like, you know, what's this about and what's that about, you know. It's like, is this story true, that kind of stuff. And it's definitely a kind of a nice, interesting side to it. So I say once you've kind of reached that level, people will kind of pay more of a vivid kind of attention to your music, as opposed to just like listening to it and be like, oh, that's good, and then moving on. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I think that's how we ended up living in, and I think we've just come out of it now, but like, you know, reality TV spawned this whole different way that we think about entertainment.
Yeah.
Because people crave something that's real, you know. So nerd rap was able to get popular or whatever about 15 years ago, where people were listening to these like nerdy Jewish dudes rapping about
Little
being
Dicky.
nerdy Jewish dudes. Yeah, but that's why people liked it though, because they're like, oh, this guy's telling the truth, and that's why he has bars. It's not because his flow is that dope or the words he uses. It's like, I think, you know, that when we all use that phrase of like, you know, of having bars, and obviously if you don't make rap music, you might not understand that as a concept. But the concept of having bars, it's not about like the technique or the words you say. It's mostly about how true the bars are.
Yeah.
You
And the
know,
way you
or at
deliver,
least
like.
that's the conclusion that. Yeah, exactly, and that's the conclusion that I've come to, because the delivery itself will expose whether or not it's real. Like you gave a brilliant example of like Eminem, or like especially early Eminem.
Yeah.
That's why people bought into it, because
It was fresh too,
he
like,
created. It was so fresh, but that's why it was so fresh, because everybody else was talking about having all this stuff and how deadly they were, where he was making an album talking about how shit he was, and that's why people liked 8 Mile, because
literally
people
raping
could
his own mother,
relate to the
like.
character. Do you know what I mean? People could relate to the character because he just seems like he's the underdog, you know. And most people feel like the underdog because most people don't have a lot of money. And man, I went to see Eminem in Punchestown. I don't remember what year that was. It's like 2005 or 2006. But like, I watched thousands of people sing "I'm Sorry Mama" with him. Like thousands of people
In Ireland too,
from
like.
the other side of the ocean, are singing with this dude about killing his family. Like, do you know, it's like,
I would have loved to have been
that's-
around
that's-
in that era. Like, I mean, I love Eminem and all, but
It
like
was dope,
definitely
man.
kind of after he kind of came back after getting off drugs and stuff like that, it just wasn't the same for me. Like, his best stuff is behind him. Like, he's like, I'm not shitting on him completely. He's done some good stuff, but beside like the first 4 albums there, from Infinite to the Eminem Show, like is pretty fucking unmatched in terms of, especially the latter three, the Slim Shady, Marshall Mathers, and Eminem Show. Like that trilogy there is, you know, how many of your favorite rappers do you know have 3 sick albums in a row? Very few, in my opinion. Like, and I'm not an Eminem dick writer or anything like that. Certainly not. I think he gets his arse licked a little bit too much these days because he's made a lot of trash, in my opinion. But there's nothing to say that he isn't, you know, up there with one of the best of all time. Like.
Well, I suppose, you know, for most people he'd be in the conversation. You could argue that, you know, I would argue that he's one of the most influential. But to be honest, I was never really an Eminem dude. I went to that gig in Punchestown because Cypress Hill were playing at it, and they were dope.
I think I know lads who were at that gig. They mentioned to me before.
It was very, very good, man. It was absolutely class. But when it comes to Eminem, yeah, man, I'm a juggalo. I'm an ICP dude, and I think if the homies really wanna know about their history, go back and listen to the albums that ICP made before Eminem ever came on the scene. Then look into the lore between Eminem and ICP,
stuff, yeah.
and tell me that you don't hear ICP in that first Eminem album.
A much better
it's all
version,
over it, man.
In my opinion, lyrically. But, I
well,
definitely agree.
I mean,
there is, in fairness, yeah, they probably were a fucking a heavy.
It's the whole style, man. Bro, look, I'm not gonna rehash stories because I wasn't there. I'm only, you know, understanding the lore from miles away and years later, like anyone else. But if you just go back and listen to those albums, man, it's like his whole style is fucking. It's that Detroit gimmick rap that ICP, you could argue, were like the pioneers of. So I fucking love ICP, man. They get a lot of shit, but like those dudes did a lot without nearly as much help as guys like Eminem. Do you know what I mean? It's
I'll
like,
be honest, I'm not a fan of them at all. Like, I like one song, Chicken Hunting, just because the beat is sick. And it was something I was going to mention earlier. Like, a lot of the time, if the beat is sick, I'd listen to an average rapper as opposed to a shitty beat with a sick rapper. Do you know what I mean? But that's the classic case of it, like, where the beat is fucking sick. But like, I think what really turned me off them was I heard a few songs where they were trying to be a bit conscious. And I was just like, and it was coming off as brain dead. Like, I was like, man, fuck this. Like, I don't know what tune it was, but like, not to shit on you for liking them or anything like that, but I thought I'd be honest and say like, nah, I think they're fucking awful.
Yeah, everybody, they've got this bad rep of it. And don't get me wrong, I'm by no means like an ICP dick writer, not at all. If you listen to my music, like the music I make, and you listen to ICP's music, you'd be, you know, I think a lot of people are shocked to hear that. Like, I fuck with them, and I fuck with a lot of the music that is spawned from them and that's related to them. But for me, it's that thing of sincerity, man. Like, obviously it's fucking gimmick rap, but you know, they've blurred the line between who they are as people and the characters they portray within their music. True. That it becomes very, very endearing, you know, and it's less like, you know, so let's say if there's certain situations where I'm like, right, I'll fucking listen to some DMX and fucking get in the zone, you know, that's not really how I listen to ICP or a lot of that music. It's more like you're listening to it for entertainment purposes, but I always find myself being pleasantly surprised by how profound a lot of it is, man. You know what I mean? Because it's not trying so hard to make you believe that they're cool. They talk about things that we can actually relate to, like fighting with your bird, fucking going to a job that you hate. You know what I mean? When you're on the way to work to a fucking job you hate, and you're listening to a tune about going to a job you hate, it's actually quite refreshing rather than listening to a tune about a dude who's living the life he is. Like, yeah, I got all this money and I'm living. You know what I mean? That's fucking depressing, man. To be on the way to work and listening to some dude talk about how he has everything.
I don't have that fucking money.
Yeah, that fucking
like
bum me out the fuck. Like. So big time. So man, if I have to go and work in a shit job that I don't want to go to, I'm 100% listening to ICP along the way.
It's uplifting, I guess, in the sense if it's more entertaining as opposed to just like, you know, something like the Jizza or Ghostface or something like where it's you're kind of listening to it more in depth if you're a rap fan anyways, kind of.
It's taxing for the brain to listen to the Jizza. I love the Jizza, man, especially his solo work, but it is fucking taxing to the brain. You need a fucking dictionary to find out what the fuck guy, but he's not
very he's not very interested in real life. I met him at when he did the gig in Dolan's, and like, still fucking delighted to see the Jizza, but he was very just kind of robotic. I know he's nearly 60, but like, I've seen Public Enemy and De La Soul, and they're as old, and they were fucking like kids on stage, like, so he was very kind of
Yeah,
disinterested with the place. He was kind of bitching at the crowd, like, for even though like 60, 70 of us, or no more, probably 100 plus, were all singing his tunes, and he was acting like we were a dead crowd. And then I heard he said the same thing about Cork and Dublin too, because I knew lads who went there. But fuck it, like, you know what I mean. He's still a sick rapper, and I guess from my point of view, I think I mentioned to Arcane Stokes in the last episode as well. Is like, if you've been told you're class for being a rapper for 30 years, I guess it probably does wear off on some level, like, you know, because I mean, you're never going to see any of these kids again. Like, he signed my Amberleaf pouch though, so that was better than nothing. Like.
Well, I think though as well, you know, if we look at the Jizz's lyrics and we look at, say, De La Soul's lyrics, like, obviously De La Soul makes some really positive lyrics and it's really clever, but you know, it's not as mentally taxing to listen to their music. So I would imagine it's not as mentally taxing to write that music or perform it. So but I have seen that with a lot of artists that I've seen live that I would have considered to be like you know, maybe have great intellectual. Well, not even underwhelming, but I found the ones that had great intellectual prowess always seemed a bit jaded, like, you know what I mean? That they were a little bit fucking burnt out from, like, whatever, trying to drop this knowledge the whole time. But it's like, you know,
it's going over most people's heads, Dublin, in fairness, like.
Well, that's the thing, man. That's
Liquid Swords is a pretty
Galway
philosophical album, but like, it's RZA's production and just the overall flow of it that's like,
it's everything.
Fucking sick about it. But like, if you actually kind of have to sit back and listen to it to another layer to actually figure out what he's on about a lot of the time, because I mean, it might kind of come off a bit gibberishy if you're kind of just vibing to it, like.
Yeah, I think it's definitely for the hardcore rap fans. You know what I mean? If you put that on for a person who doesn't listen to rap music or hip hop,
absolutely sick album, and I love that fucking album just from back to front. Like, it's a movie, and I don't really see a lot of albums in that sense. Wu-Tang have a good few of them. But Liquid Swords, like, especially, just something about it, man, just back to front, like, it just feels like, you know, you're basically in fucking Shogun Assassin or something like that. But
you're in Shogun Assassin,
it's
layered with all the samples.
New York, essentially, like, but the way they've kind of, I've said this before too, like, they got Kung Fu and hip hop and somehow made the coolest fucking biggest hip hop movement of all time, like, if not one of the biggest music movements that's lasted for, you know, 30, 40 years, like, do you know what I mean? Well, 30 years, like, that's fucking insane. Like, people have Wu-Tang tattoos and shit like that.
Yeah, it's wild, man. 36 Chambers, and weirdly enough, the W, a lot of people didn't really fuck with that.
Yeah.
But I had it at the time when it came out. Do you know what I mean? So, like, maybe it's just about context or whatever, but there was so many tracks on that like, I think there's a track on there by Isaac Hayes, and there's a lot of, like, really, I don't know, crisp live kind of feeling to it, whereas 36 Chambers is really
raw,
dark, and it all sounds like it was recorded in a fucking cave, and then the W was just so clean, you know.
It does kind of take away a little bit of, I guess, authenticity, or kind of like you're kind of feeling like, oh, they've moved on to be commercial. It was kind of the same with Kurt Cobain said it about Nevermind, like, he didn't really like how polished it was, but that's why they kind of went back to a bit more of a raw sound for In Utero. So I imagine that
I liked it though, man. I liked it. A lot of people didn't fuck with that album, but I suppose I was listening to it in a vacuum where I wasn't in a hip hop community. I was like almost exclusively going to heavy metal gigs, and my brother had that album, so I was listening to that album every day. But I wasn't like, you know, I wasn't reading the source. I wasn't at hip hop gigs. I was just listening to it independently on my Discman, trying to squeeze that thing into my fucking pocket, hoping that the batteries didn't go dead before I got to the Ambassador to, like, go see Andrew WK or something. Do you know what I mean? So I was listening to it in a total vacuum, and to be honest, that's how I've actually experienced. That's how I've experienced not just a lot of rap music, but a lot of music in general. You know, I started collecting music very young, so I would just be listening to an album completely out of context because I have that album.
Yeah.
You know, so my relationship with it would be askew then from, I don't know, whatever the scene was, even if it was happening at the time when I was listening to it.
The means of access to back then, like, I mean, I started collecting music maybe in the last couple of years. I had a few CDs when I was a kid, but like, once I actually had a bit of money, I started collecting records and cassettes and CDs and shit. And like, I'd see some CDs I get, and it's like, says 25 quid on it, like, and it's like, 25 quid for this, fuck. So like, you bought a CD back then, they weren't always that expensive, but like, you know, that's what you were listening to for the next fucking God knows how long, do you know what I mean? So you'd want to like it, and even if you didn't like it initially, you're probably going to end up liking it because you don't have fucking Spotify to just flick on any song you want in the world. Back in the day, you had this CD, and then you slowly bought more and more, and like, you were stuck with it kind of, unless you traded it with your friends or something like that. So I guess that would have a kind of a effect as well in that sense.
Well, that was my motivation to get my first job. Like, I got my first job collecting glasses in a pub when I was 13. And you had to be 16 to get the job, but like, I was tall, there was no other black people around. I was already wearing New Rocks, so I was like about the same height I am now.
You
like
you could still get away with that shit
like,
back kind of. Not
yeah,
my brothers were working at 13,
country.
but by the time I was 16, my old, I was like, I can't get you a job. Like, I was like, what the fuck, man?
Exactly, it wasn't that illegal yet. People were still smoking indoors, and that was my motivation to get a job, because my brother had a job and he was buying a gang of CDs and bought like a new stereo, and I was like, this is some bullshit, man. Do you know what I mean? I'm trying to buy N64 games and fucking buy Jamiroquai albums, and you know what I mean, buy the shit. And then yeah, once I started working there, man, my first paycheck was like £62, man, and that was like whatever, like 2 weekends in a row worth of money. And I bought Mechanical Animals by Marilyn Manson, and I bought the first Korn album, and the version of Mechanical Animals that I bought was an American import. It was £23, man. It was 23 fucking pounds, and the first Korn album was like £16. That was the first two things that I bought, and then I was just hooked, man. I was just collecting CDs for years and years, and it got to the point where, as I was changing as a person, I would go in HMV in the Blind Centre. They used to have this whole, like, I don't know, you remember the way they used to store the CDs in like one kind of row, if you like. There's like, you know how it's divided, like one of those kind of case type deals.
I get you, yeah.
Everything in it was £2. Everything was £2, but it spanned every genre. So I start buying country music and I start buying jazz music, and that was honestly how I figured out like a bunch of shit that I had no business listening to, do you know? Like my mom always listened to country music, but like I got into country music on my own, like in a different way, do you know, by just fucking going into HMV and buying that shit, man. It was such a gamble, because you only had a certain amount of money. You know what I mean?
I've been very lucky,
but you had to chance
I've been very lucky in the sense that because people obviously don't want to be hauling around CDs and cassettes and records and stuff, a lot of older people that were just getting rid of them just gave them to me. So like I have a good few people's, or kind of cycled through, because I'd sell off anything I don't want, but like I've gotten a good few people's fucking entire record collection, cassette collection, CD collection, just because they were moving away or something. They were like, here, you like this stuff, you can have it. I was like, fuck. Some of it worth a fair bit as well, but still as well, finding a load of stuff just worth fucking listening to. Or there's a bit kind of, you know, like the old school style of getting a vinyl, fucking sampling a vinyl and then putting it onto your tractor basically, or something like that. Like I kind of liked the idea of like taking or collecting random records and stuff like that, and then just hooking them up to the record player and just recording them that way. Like it just kind of adds a bit of kind of, I guess, authenticity, as opposed to where I'd be taking samples off YouTube the whole time. Like it's a bit more old school than a YouTube playlist filled specifically with songs that are fucking meant to be sick for sampling. Like I kind of liked the idea of buying a few 45s or something like that for £10 and then taking what I want out of it and bringing them back and trading them in. It's definitely a cool hobby to have a collection like that. But I'm not fucking looking forward to when I have to move out of here and fucking haul it all with me, because like I've got a nice kind of nicely sized room here where I can basically live in it. Like I've got everything I need, but I'd say I'd be paying, you know, £500-600 for this fucking room if it was in town or something like that. So my biggest nightmare would be to have to get rid of any of it. But I think it's kind of more so I have so much other shite that like if I have to move, the music collection's getting first priority, I guess, and then I can ditch some other stuff if I have to, you know.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think getting rid of any medium is definitely a big mistake. You know, you see it like every 10-15 years. They're like, oh, we're never going to need these again. And everybody just gets rid of all their shit, and then
records
it's like 30 years later, it's like,
or they did recently.
Yeah, man.
They're a very niche thing, and cassettes are back too. Like, I mean, I've got a good few cassettes there that are brand new, either reissues or new. They're just new albums. Like a lot of the UK guys, like from High Focus and shit.
Yeah, I've seen them doing it.
Cassettes and vinyls and CDs as well. Like so. I've made CDs before, but I'd love to at some point make a cassette or a record just for the sake of having it, not even just to produce for money. Like I'd hope, of course, I could do that, but even if I could just have one, it'd be cool. It's just not so common for just someone to be able to do that at home. Like the guy who makes my CDs, he does everything in his room. Fucking makes the CD, does all the artwork, etc. Like so that's handy out. But a cassette or a fucking record, I imagine, wouldn't be so simple, and whatever the machinery or whatever you need for it is probably not easily found nowadays. I've looked up sorry, I've looked up online and like people are producing records. It's usually a minimum, and it's a hefty minimum. It's like 300 for like, I don't know, 2-3 grand or something like that. It's kind of like I can't really afford that. Like I was looking maybe at like 5 or something like, but yeah. And to be honest, if anyone's listening to this and produces fucking vinyls or cassettes at home or something like that, or knows a guy who does it that, you know, wouldn't take your arm and leg, feel free to let us know, just even for my own interest, or if any other artists are interested in doing that, because it's a cool medium. And be honest, the most money I've probably ever made is from selling physical media. You'd be surprised, like even people who just don't have CD players, because I think I'd say out of my whole friend group I'm probably the only one who still has a CD player, like, and yet they all still buy the CD for the sake of having a physical thing. And usually they're always pretty sure of themselves, saying, sure, I might be worth fucking 100 quid in a couple of years, like you're worth $1 million.
And that's ambitious, but no, it is nice to have something tangible, you know. I think, like, don't get me wrong, I think there's also merit in like sampling something from a YouTube video, or like sampling from wherever you can get it, like, you know. I've sampled soundscapes by just recording a voice memo on my phone while I'm sitting at the beach, you know, and put that into a tune. You can sample from anywhere, but I suppose the harder you work for it, the more valuable it feels to you, you know, and the more valuable it feels to you, then it, you know, it's likely the harder you're going to work on the track itself. So for me personally, having started out by like buying completely random CDs just to try and sample them, being able to use any digital medium is like, it's still such a trip for me, man. You know, it used to be so hard to sample things, whether it was the software or just finding the sounds themselves, or finding a way to like, right, well, we have this record but we have no way to get it onto the fucking computer. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, just there was always kind of something in the way. We did our best, like, but I think for the time that we were doing it, we did well. But being able to use all the digital mediums, man, it's such a blessing to me. So I think the key is
it is certainly, like, it's like for me it's just the love of the physical media, really. But I don't deny the fact that like Spotify and fucking all that shit, it's a blessing, certainly. Like, it's no different from a, you know, Netflix and stuff like that. I guess, like, I don't use Netflix, but I imagine, like, you know, it saves you so much hassle from actually, you know, going out and having to find a movie, or that movie may not be there or whatever. Like, you know, if you're going to find it, I mean, not even necessarily Netflix, but if you're looking for a particular movie, chances are it's going to be somewhere on the internet, on some illegal site, as opposed to having to go out there, search 5 or 6 video stores if you're really that desperate, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then not being able to find it. So it's you know, the World Wide Web is a fucking great thing in the sense that it's opened up this massive world to us. But, you know, also that world can be a little bit overwhelming, I guess, too, for some people. Sadly.
Yeah, but then, you know, on top of that, like, let's say you're looking for that niche film, you know, that you read that sounds dope and you really want to check it out, and you could spend as long trying to find an illegal link for it as the film is. Whereas I suggest just buy the fucking film, dude. You know, like, I have pretty much always paid for music. I'm not gonna lie and say I've never stolen music. Of course, I've stolen loads of music, but, you know, if you've ever seen me DJ over the last 15 years, the chances are is that I paid for every single tune, and any tune I didn't pay for was like a free edit that somebody posted on SoundCloud or something like that. You know what I mean?
I buy all the Irish hip hop that I have on my MP3 player. Like,
that's dope, man.
I'd always be
like, I mean, like, if you're using Spotify or whatever, like, that's still paying for the music. I've been paying for Spotify for like fucking since Spotify has been out. People used to slag me for paying for Spotify, man. I was like, here, look, I'm fucking sick of fucking collecting all these CDs and shit. I can listen to most of the music here, you know what I mean? I'm just gonna pay for the shit. I don't want to listen to the ads, and I'm still paying for it now. So if you really, really want to not have a ball ache trying to watch something or listen to something, or, you know, get a sample or something, just fucking pay for it. Like, that'd be definitely be my advice. It's like, it's always gonna be easier if you just pay your shit, you know what I mean?
I still have DVDs there, like, fucking put them on the PS4, like, and if it's a movie that I want to watch on TV as opposed to sitting on the laptop or the computer, like, I'll actually go out and buy it. Like, or if it's something a bit more kind of obscure, where it's may not even necessarily be online and stuff like that. So, like, yeah, no, it's for me, it's more so like, you know, I'll support people who need the money. We mentioned that yesterday, like, Irish rappers, they need the money, and it's not fair because I want to get paid for my music, so I'll pay them for their music, you know, unless they're sending it to me for free, obviously. But with, like, you know, bigger artists or film companies and stuff like that, it's kind of like, you know, is it really making any fucking difference to them? Do you know what I mean? I'm buying this DVD off fucking Sex or GameStop or some shit now. Like, it's like that's not going to anyone anymore besides them. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of like a bit redundant. Like,
yeah, it is. It definitely is. But I do commend you for buying all the Irish artists' music, because I think buying music it's definitely a lost art. You know, like when I was coming up, you just had to buy music, or else you got your friend to, you know, tape you Master of Puppets from a CD onto a tape or whatever. You know, but now I think, like I said, it's the more accessible things are, the kind of less valuable they are. So for the layman, they're going, well, why the fuck would I buy this record? I could just watch the music video on YouTube for free. So, you know what I mean? So I commend you for buying the music, man.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame the general consumer.
No, me neither. No, of course not.
I probably wouldn't give a fuck about any of that if I wasn't an artist myself. Do you know what I mean? I'd be straight up just using Spotify and all that shit, and I wouldn't be buying anyone's music. But because I'm in that position myself, I acknowledge it, and it's kind of like, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be happy if people were, if I knew other rappers were ripping my music off YouTube and fucking putting it on their MP3 player, and I can't imagine many of them. It's much nicer to be fucking that they'll actually go out and buy it. You know what I mean? Like,
well, honestly, bro, you know, I would love if motherfuckers was ripping my music off YouTube, so they could have the track and listen to it. So anybody listening to it, go hit up YouTube, rip my music, listen to that shit, man. If you're listening to it, you're already doomed anyway. So
don't touch mine. I'm in this for the bitches, the riches, the business, and all that shit. I'm
just trying to pollute minds, man. So, you know, if they can own the music and listen to it at their leisure, even when the cyber pandemic hits and you still want to listen to Citizen Black, you know, make sure you have that shit, man. It's coming up, bro. Cyber pandemic is on the way.
Klaus Schwab, man, predicted it, man. This fucking
hyper-genius
leader of the World Economic Forum. Who the fuck is this cunt? Like, he just showed up out of nowhere, and it's like,
he's a super villain, bro.
He's got Alzheimer's, man, and he was meant to be in the next James Bond movie. He just walked into the wrong set, and they were like, "Oh, you must be the leader of the World Economic Forum." He probably thinks he's in a Bond
film. Dude.
Like,
did you not see? For the homies that don't know who the fuck we're talking about Klaus Schwab, right? This dude is a fucking super villain. Anybody can.
You will own nothing and be happy.
Anybody can test me on that, and I can prove that he's a super villain just by the clothes he's wearing. You know, you see this shit.
Oh, look at him, man.
The getup that he's wearing, he look like something out of fucking Fifth Element.
Yeah, it's very very odd, isn't it? The fucking little like is it kind of like a cross thing on his chest, the little metal thing, and the outfit, like, oh,
he's a fucking super villain.
He looks. Do you know who he looks like? You know, do you ever see The Land Before Time? Ducky.
He's got that ducky face. He does have that ducky face.
Yeah. So he's obviously if there ever was a reptile out there, there you go. Like,
well, we're getting into dicey territory now, and I'm here for it, bro. You know, for real, there's a fairly good chance, you know, that it's going to become more and more difficult to use the internet and things like that. So it just kind of reaffirms.
They're recommending like this ID card and shit for it, like, basically, you know, essentially, like, you know, you're not just logging into Facebook, you're logging into the internet.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And you're identifying yourself straight. Like, I mean, that's what doesn't make sense. Like, it's like on my fucking Google Chrome, it says Conor McMurrow. Like, my name, every last detail is pumped into the computer. So it's kind of like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it's just more so just to limit access in some cases, pretty much. Like, limit access pretty much is what the way I see it, as opposed to like stopping like, you know, bad people getting in it. Like, it's more so just limit access across the board if they go ahead and decide to do this. You know what I mean? If there's this ginormous cyber attack that they've been predicting, I guess, as they said. I mean, the HSE, you know, all our fucking phones are getting rang 10 times a day by random numbers saying that we've committed some crime or some shit. Like, I don't know if you're getting them, but I'm still getting them at this stage. And that's supposedly why, like, because the HSE was hacked by fucking Morpheus or something.
By Morpheus. Well,
that's why he's not in the new Matrix film, man.
Well, you know, if it's going to become more and more difficult to use the internet, I think that's even more of a reason for people to try and pick up the tangible mediums, you know, your records, your tapes, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I've said that was kind of a reason before, because you never know when this shit might be illegal. You never know.
Big time.
Or, like, you know, they take fucking anyone from Eminem to Wu-Tang to fucking Quentin Tarantino movies. Like, I mean, it's a bit wild, but you never know. Like, I mean,
well,
you really don't know. So it's kind of, I like to preserve some stuff there. If things go to shit, at least I'll have a lot of stuff here to fucking keep me fucking happy till I get eaten by cannibals.
Well, when I heard about this a couple of years ago, someone said there's gonna be like worldwide cyber attacks, you know, all this kind of shit. What I said was, well, I just won't use the internet then. Well, that's the immediate solution. Just don't use the internet. It's like, well, what about your money? What about, it's like, right, well, what am I gonna do, bro? Do you know what I mean? If there's a mad cyber attack, you think I'm
sell drugs?
Yeah, well, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna go full Tron and I'm gonna get into the internet and start fixing shit. I'm not gonna fucking do that. I'm gonna write poetry about it. I'm just not gonna use the internet, you know. So bring it on, Klaus Schwab. I'm calling your bluff, you super villain.
Yeah, and if he wants to fucking scrap as well, to be honest, man, if there's any man I want to scrap, it's Klaus Schwab.
Well, that's
man.
a good one.
You know, I don't really care. I don't really give a fuck if you're an old man, man. I think you're saying some dangerous things out there, and it's annoying.
That's a good one. Everyone.
I loved bringing that. When me and my old lad were kind of debating COVID and stuff ages ago, me bringing up the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab. He was like, "Have you heard of this Klaus Schwab?" I was like, "Who's this Klaus Schwab, lad?" Like, the World Economic Forum. He was like, he said, I was like, yada yada yada. I was like, "Oh yeah, you will own nothing and be happy." And he's like, Did he say that? Yeah. He's like, that's bullshit.
No.
That's just moved on. That was the end of the conversation.
It's coming, yo. Now everybody should have one person that if they get the chance, they're gonna scrap them regardless. And mine is the Queen of England, just because I think that would be an excellent like optic. You know, to see me going full straightener, going full Super Saiyan.
I would laugh.
Punching the head off the Queen.
Like proper like.
Yeah, so I've got
clothesline.
I've got a few plans, because you know she's a hard creature to meet. So the only way to do it is
hard to get to. Like.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna have to start some kind of nefarious NGO and like start hiding pedophiles with Bono, so that she's willing to knight me. And then as she goes to knight me, boom, just straight up, bam, get the mandible claw on that bitch straight into the cocaine clutch, man. I'm gonna have to fucking shoot me in the head to get me off her. It's gonna be amazing, dude. You see me.
She shapeshifts into a fucking.
Well, we can only hope. We can only hope. You know, I'll take one for the team, but I'm gonna choke out the Queen. That's bars. There you go, lads.
There was a documentary on YouTube, and it's like unlisted, and like it's been deleted apparently a lot of times, and I don't understand why it would be deleted if it's just like bullshit. Like, it's one of these like kind of short reptile documentaries.
I love it.
This guy Robert Monroe, who like he basically like in the 50s developed some like vibration in his chest, and it's just drive him insane, and he'd go like he just basically have to lay down. And he started lucid dreaming basically, like, and fucking transcending into like the outer dimension or whatever the fuck. And then he claimed that he basically encountered reptiles while he was there. And this is kind of initially the kind of, I guess, the kind of bombshell that kind of spread that around to everyone. And so it's like, I think that it's probably a subconscious thing, that because it's kind of a thing attached to like lucid dreaming or entering the other dimension is reptiles. So I imagine it's just stuck in everyone's head. So whatever you're thinking about, it's fucking manifesting or whatever. But he was claiming that these were basically like shape-shifting fucking reptiles, and like as soon as he entered their dimension, they went insane and chased him away and fucking like tried to kill him and all this. And he was claiming that like the CIA like had learned these techniques and shit, and like had been able to fucking time travel and go to space and fucking all. Like, I mean, it's very wild shit. And I'm not
here for
by any means saying I believe it, but it's just interesting to see like where the fuck is he bringing this out? Like, it's like, you know, the small like what if, like whatever about the fucking reptiles and shit, but like, you know, the CIA are a fucked up crew, do you know what I mean? Like,
they are
kind of like, if anyone was going to try to do that, it would be them. And they're doing all this time travel shit and interdimensional stuff. It was a while since I've seen it, so I can't remember all the details. I have a book by him actually that I haven't read yet, and it's basically about like him entering the world of lucid dreaming, like, and like I think that I lucid dreamt actually very recently, man. It was fucking quite scary, like in a sense, like, and in the dream I was having sex with a woman, and I could see myself having sex with this woman in this dream. Like, I was half awake, more like a sleep paralysis kind of thing, but it definitely like extended outside past that. And she just pulled me down in a headlock and started speaking this demonic shit in my ear. Like, I was like, I pulled up and I was like, that's not very sexy. Do you mind not doing that? And she did it again. And then I woke up, and the first thing I did was text her this, because it was a woman I knew in real life. Like, I was like, I just had a fucking funny dream where you did this, and like she took it like seriously and was like, I'd never do that to you. Like, I hope you know that. I was like, I know, it's just fucking scary.
Wow.
Like, and I switched off. I went to sleep again, and it happened instantly again straight after.
Wow, that's wild, man.
I was very, very much awake, but I was outside my window with one of my mates, and there was a barrel, and like, you know, like the typical homeless guys in movies are sitting around the barrel
with the fire in it. Yeah.
And there was a jacket on the ground, and I just go, why is there a jacket on the ground? Who owns that? And then I slowly started waking up, and honestly, like, I was trying to wake myself up so much. In my head, I was biting my hand to wake myself up because I was like half freaking out. I was wake up, wake up. I just woke up and I was totally still, and I wasn't biting my hand or anything like that. But that's just the kind of the level of fear that's fucking hit me really hard in that situation. Like, and what Robert Monroe was talking about basically was like completely relaxing in these sleep paralysis moments. Like, and I don't get it. That's like the third time I've ever gotten in my life. But if you like relax completely, you can supposedly do some pretty mad shit from what I've read about and stuff like that. Yeah. I don't know how real that is, but
there's definitely something to
said, like,
to lucid dreaming for sure. There's definitely something to it.
It's scary, like.
I like this theory of being able to meet reptilian overlords in your sleep. That's really interesting.
I personally don't want to do that.
Well,
if there's any conspiracy theories that aren't real, I don't want to be fucking mauled by fucking reptilian cunts and fucking in my lucid dreams. Like.
I do enjoy that one, but the funny thing is, man, is I think, yeah, in the last couple of years I've definitely been dubbed as a conspiracy theorist, but the weird thing is that, like, you know, I haven't said anything that is like mad untrue. Do you know what I mean? I never said. Like,
it's an interesting topic, like.
Well,
overall, with the bullshit and the real stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm interested in reptiles and stuff. Like, I find that an interesting theory and all the crazy stuff. But I'm not like fucking. You know, that's not part of what I'm like looking out for and like thinking like, oh, this is true. Like, it's just part of it that's interesting. Like, you can pick pieces apart. Like, you know, it's just an interesting topic overall. So like, yeah, I get what you're saying in the sense like, you know, what the general stuff you're coming out with is pretty true and not fucking, what's the word, outwardly, like.
Yeah.
But I mean, people naturally correlate that you're like, oh, if he believes this, he probably believes that fucking, you know, the Queen's a reptile, or
well, there you go.
You know, the Tartarian fucking civilization or some shit like this.
Well, I think this is where the confusion lies. You know, it's that term itself, like, it's a multifaceted thing. So, you know, under that one umbrella, you've got, hey, look, I can fucking go and meet our reptilian overlords in my sleep. I'm like, much like yourself. I find that deeply interesting. But I also, I'm not determined to, like, you know, start trying to buy every book about it and like study it and really get into it and, like, you know, be one of those dudes. But then on the other end of it, you've got like, hey, everybody, the government's trying to fuck with you. And I go, you're just a crazy conspiracy theorist. That would never happen. But then 6 months later, the thing that you wrote a song about fucking happens, and you know, it's fucking crickets. But then I'm not even interested in either of those. And I think and that's the unfortunate thing, is that they're the two that I get labeled with. That I'm like a conspiracy guy that fucking hates the government, but I'm a conspiracy guy that also like thinks, you know, some of the kind of wilder stuff. Man, I enjoy conspiracy theories, but not those ones. The conspiracy theories that I'm into, like fucking Bigfoot and shit, dude. That's what I'm interested in. I don't give a fuck about reptilian overlords, and I know the government's trying to fuck with me, so I don't even care what anyone says about that. I'm interested in fucking Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, fucking aliens. You know what I mean? Area 51. Let's get into these ones, bro, because those other ones, they're passe, they're cliche, and they're boring. And it sometimes saddens me when I get this hate mail from people about bars that I wrote, and I'm like, I am crazy, but I'm not the kind of crazy that you think I am. I'm actually a really kind of crazy. Like, I will 100% chat to you about Bigfoot in the smoking area for 2 to 3 hours. I'm not even joking, man.
Of course I would.
I put my night on hold to chat to a dude who claims he saw Bigfoot. I'm not even joking, man. For fucking real.
I was outside Area 51.
Well, there you go. You know what I mean? It's like,
stood by the fence where it says "Don't cross here, you get shot." Like, it was funny at first. Like, I didn't actually realize where we were. I just saw the sign. I didn't see the sign for Area. I don't know if there is a sign for Area 51, whatever. Like, but I was like, oh, there's fucking one of these, like, don't cross this fence, you get shot. We pull up and get a picture here, and we got a picture. And then I was like, I wonder where we are. And checked the maps. It's like, oh fuck, man, like, this is literally Area 51. And my mate, who's a bit naive, was like, oh man, well, like, what do we do? Like, get the fuck out of here. It's like, we're so, like, we're on the road, like, you know, this is a highway, or not a highway, but a kind of, you know, a main road, like, so it wasn't a big deal, like. But he was just the movies, conspiracies, and it just fucking went boom. Like, it's like, oh, we're gonna get shot here and we're never gonna be seen again. Like,
I don't know, dude. I was like really big into X-Files when it was on TV the first time, and I've rewatched it since. I don't know if I'd be fucking parking up to have a blaze outside Area 51. Fuck that shit, dude. You know what I mean? And that's the funny thing, is that, like, you know, it's much more enjoyable to be like, it's getting dark and we're in the woods. I'm concerned about Bigfoot. That's way more crack than, like, you know, thinking about.
You're just gonna destroy your soul as well if you read too deeply into stuff.
Exactly.
Plain blatantly negative and depressing, it's like, it could be true, but like, a little bit of ignorance is bliss. Like, don't be fucking, have your head up your arse, but like, yeah, it's naturally, there's nothing you can essentially do about a lot of this stuff, so it's like, you're just gonna fucking bog yourself down. I've done it to myself plenty times where it's just like, I need to stop reading this shit.
Big time.
It's like, keeping myself awake at 2 a.m, like reading something like, fuck, that's pretty scary.
Yeah.
Like,
well, I think, and this is, and I've seen this happen to people in real time, is that people go from, they turn into the thing that they hated, so they just replace the news with like conspiratorial media, but they're kind of they're binge watching and binge consuming that stuff, so it's like it's affecting it's affecting their lives in a negative way. So, you know, the best thing to do is just like, I don't know, whenever you have a little bit of free time, just see what's popping off with those good ones, like my boy Bigfoot, you know, fuck with Sasquatch. If anybody has any good Sasquatch stories, hit me up with the hate mail on that, man, because I fuck with Sasquatch. He's fucking dope, man.
love that hate mail.
Oh, I'm here for the hate mail, bro.
Yeah. It's funny when you said you wouldn't pull up and blaze a joint in near Area 51. Like, we when we were coming back from there a couple of days later, we were passing through LA and we decided we'd stay the night there in a hostel, and we said, fuck it, we'll go to Compton the next day. Like,
Jesus Christ.
2 white lads in a white car, like,
fuck's sake, man.
a nice fucking rented Mustang. Like, it actually wasn't too expensive to rent a Mustang, and my mate, like, he fucking said, like, he was driving, I don't drive, like, and he was like, look, I'll pay if you throw in like $100 toward this. Like, fuck it, why not? So we went into Compton and into South Park and like blazed a spliff there, and like fucking, even like the postman drove past us, like, and every woman there was black, obviously. Like, he pulled up and he just looked at us, he was like, what the fuck are you doing here?
Jesus Christ.
And it was the next day then, I wasn't there, I don't know where I was, I think I was at the hostel. My mate went somewhere and he got a taxi with a black woman, and she said like, oh, you know, where are you from? You're from Ireland, whatever, like, where have you visited? Like, oh, we went to Compton yesterday. And she was like, what the fuck? Like, I wouldn't even go there. Like, what the hell is wrong with you? And like, he was like, oh yeah, we were in a white Mustang, and like, she looked at him and he was wearing like an NYPD t-shirt, and I had one as well. And she was like, they probably thought you were fucking cops, like. And I was like, fuck it, man. The way I saw it, I was like, 2 Irish lads, like, no other Irish lads gonna fucking go and do this. Like, we're like, fuck it, man. We'll pull in and just fucking see the place and go, like. And it was interesting, man, to fucking see it. Like, we were blaring fucking Kendrick Lamar and Tupac and all that like shit in the car. Like, it's like just really taking it in, like, and it's fucking interesting experience for sure. Like,
yeah, definitely. I think you for sure have a different relationship with music when you see it in its natural habitat, you know.
Oh yeah, I said that to another thing that we said last week was like, even listening to Dublin rap in Dublin, or Northern rap up north, or Limerick rap in Limerick, it has a certain effect, and even more so when I was lucky enough to travel a good bit across America, like listening to Nas, Biggie, and Big Pun in New York, and Big L. It's like you're looking and you're in the place they're talking about, and you can just feel that kind of layer of madness and chaos they're talking about. And same in LA and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely, man.
It was cool to visit a lot of those places and see kind of the actual places they're talking about, like.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It seems really far away when you're listening to any music that's from somewhere else. But then when you're actually in the place, you can feel it, and I think it gives you a better understanding of that music on a fundamental level. You know.
The magic on the subway, man, just kind of fucking listening to Illmatic, like, coming in when I first came in, like, because the thing was I had food poisoning that I caught the day before on my flight. Shit. Just before my flight from Canada, I was staying with my brother there for a while, and it was the most vicious shit ever. Like, it happened all overnight. Like, ate food with them, went home and just felt miserably sick, and then got up that next morning, I was puking, and I had to fucking catch a flight in like an hour. And when I got to New York, I was meeting one of my mates there because he was visiting America. I had been in Canada. He said, like, look, I'm going to America in a month. If you want to meet me over there. I was like, fuck it, man, why not? Like, I've got a bit of money there. And but he didn't wait for me at the fucking airport. Like, he would have been waiting an hour or two, but he decided to fuck off into New York. Like, I was like, man, of all places, like, we're in the biggest city in the world. Like, you know what I mean? It would have been nice for both of us to find the place. Like, and I was dying sick. And I was like, oh, fuck it, like, and I just got on the train, and I had, like, people aren't very friendly in America in that sense, like, strangers and stuff, especially in cities. So, like, having to actually ask people, like, I had to, like, kind of poke a guy, like, hey, like, what stop should I get off at, like, if I want to go here, like, and he's kind of growling at me, he's like, oh, this one. I was like, oh, fair enough, like, but what definitely made, I was basically at my lowest in terms of sickness, like, feeling like shite, blaring fucking some of the, especially, like, Illmatic and stuff like that on the way in, and just looking out the window and seeing, like, I'd never seen a place like this in my life, like skyscrapers of, you know, I think there's a couple of them in London, but they're not like that. They're not. You're
It's
not.
not the same, yeah.
There's not many cities that are like that. So obviously, I was taking it on like fuck. It's like, yeah, I don't care how sick I feel. This is still amazing. Like,
Yeah, travel.
but it, you know, it just shows that music in its natural habitat can fucking, you know, bring you up even from when you're literally puking your absolute guts out. Like,
Yeah, absolutely, man. Music is the medicine. You know, I think that's why it works so well with the ceremony of burning things and drinking things, because music, gargle, burning things, you can do it for commiseration and you can do it for celebration. You know, there is no time when it's inappropriate to do it.
Sorry there, man. I
if you're
fucking
really
was just
feeling it, you know?
the screen went blank on the computer. I was making sure it wasn't fucking going into sleep mode or anything. They're like that. I'll just cut that out. But yeah, I guess what we could move on to now is maybe kind of what are you kind of working on in the background at the minute. I know we kind of went over this before, but I think this is definitely kind of maybe a part you should kind of. I know you don't want to plug. You said you didn't want to plug yourself too much, but at least, you know, just throw that much into it, I guess. If we're gonna rehash anything.
Yeah, like it is. Well, I know, like I am admittedly not great at promoting my own music, you know. Like I let the internet know when I have something going on, and occasionally I remind people of things that I've done most recently. But I suppose it's the gift and the curse. Like the music that I write, I can only write that music if I don't care whether or not anybody listens to it, and if anybody does listen to it, I can't care what they think about it. You know, that's the only way the kind of music that I write works. You know what I mean? I cannot be checking how many people are listening to it, or how many people like it, or
That's fair.
how much of a negative or positive effect it's had on my social media. I don't fuck with any of that shit, dude. It's just not for me. It's not how my brain works. You know, and I know, you know, any amount of people are telling me all the time, basically it's implied, like, you know, if you fucking tried harder, you could be doing A or you could be doing B, and I'm like, well, that, you know, that's just...
Does it really matter to you? Do you know what I mean? It's kind of, it's based on your motives in general.
Exactly.
With music, I guess, whether or not you kind of have to care about that stuff. Because for me, I wouldn't be on nearly as much social media if it wasn't for the fact that I feel, at least for what I want to achieve, it is mandatory. Like, but again, I'm not too fucking hung up on followers or likes or views or whatever like that. As long as I know that someone's tuning in, you know, 50 people, 100 people, I'm fucking happy with that, you know.
I think where I get my satisfaction with the music is I just get, like, I think I become so like, I'm so satisfied by just finishing the piece, whether it's like, whether I'm making an instrumental house track or whether I'm, you know, writing bars or whatever I'm doing. I'm always happy to finish it. You know, over in my lifetime, I've had literally thousands of unfinished Ableton, Reason, Pro Tools files. Do you know what I mean? I have, yeah, exactly, an infinite amount. So I'm just happy to have the tunes finished. That's normally, and then I suppose I just kind of get a bit complacent after that, where I'll be like, oh, that tune is finished, and then I just kind of forget about it. You know what I mean? And that's why sometimes I'll release a song and I will have written it like way beforehand, but I just, you know, I finished it and then I didn't care whether I put it out or not, which I know is not it's not great music business, but I don't really consider myself to be in the music business. You know, I like making art, and I'm determined to always, like, just see it like that. Like, I like making art. Don't get me wrong, I'm not fucking naive. Like, if Universal come in the door tomorrow and start offering me money to make records, I'd definitely consider it, you know what I mean? But I don't consider myself to be in the music business, for a couple of reasons. Like, the main reason is that I don't know if there's a place for the kind of music that I make in the music business. There's definitely a place for it for the collectors and the hardcore heads, like, that are really into, like, fucking niche, collectible, obscure type things.
I kind of see myself the same way. Like, you know, I don't think there's a huge kind of, like, in the main stream, I guess, of the music industry, what it is. I don't think it's quite just that kind of genre. I guess it's a broad enough genre, but it's there's gatekeeping there. Not gatekeeping, it's just boundaries, you know, that, you know, that kind of put in place what that stuff needs to be. So I kind of see myself the same way. It's kind of like, it's not, you know, in that kind of position, but if you still put the work in from a business point of view or whatever, just kind of promoting your own stuff, and like, you know, it'll reach a fucking satisfactory market, I guess. So maybe if you up the ante yourself a little bit, just to kind of just give yourself, if you want to, obviously, like, but maybe a small bit, you know, might just do more wonders than you might actually think, like, without having to be, you know, stuck behind a fucking computer screen all day. Like.
The way I'm thinking about it is, it's not that I think you can make anything financially viable if you kind of engineer it the right way. I'm just not sure that there's a place for it culturally. You know what I mean? Like, I struggle to believe that there's enough people that are fucking comfortable with listening to the things that I have to say to like buy into it in the same way that, I don't know, whoever the biggest artist is in Ireland right now, I don't know who they are, but I'm quite confident that they're not calling certain politicians pedophiles, or they're not talking shit about pornography, or they're not trying to tell people to not take drugs, or saying that, hey, fake tan is some bullshit, this is a culture in, you know. People are not saying that, you know, and I'm never gonna stop saying any of that shit. So I'd rather it be one or two people, my bird and my ma and my brother and my sister and whoever else listening to my tunes, you know, than have to say things that I don't want to say, so that more people listen to my tunes, or so I can get a support slot. You know what I mean? Because like, I don't make music for those reasons. But you know, because of that as well, though, it means I'm not limited to just making rap music. Like, I make all kinds of music. So the next thing that I have coming out is a tune. What date are we today? The 21st. I have a tune coming out, I think it's next Friday, on the 26th. And that is an instrumental house track, and it's a fairly chilled, introspective buzz, and doesn't have any wild conspiracy theories, and probably won't be jarring to the average person or make them feel uncomfortable or start doubting their life choices. So that.
I don't think you mentioned that it was a house track yesterday. It was you said instrumental, and that's all you said, and I was like, oh, fair enough. Like, and is this under Citizen Black or
Citizen Black, man? Yeah, I like making house music. I like making disco edits. Like making all kinds of music. But again, it's something that I do when the baby's having a nap. I'll just sit down and like edit some jazz tune we were listening to that morning, and I won't put it up on SoundCloud. I'll just do that for like an hour and a half and not save it. You know what I mean? I do that kind of shit.
Bit of practice, like, bit of just, you know, you don't have to fucking save and export and release every bloody thing
it just feels
you know
nice.
I mean? Like, I've made the mistake myself where I just released every single song that I made, and I look back and I was like, but I've already hate like 90% of those songs, and I'm releasing a lot less stuff nowadays, I guess. Just filler, I guess.
It just depends on, you know, what you want to do with your music. Like, I suppose it can be a bit different for you as well, because you're making a lot of beats, so, you know, even a beat that you were sick of or that you thought wasn't as good as your other beats, the right vocals on that could turn it into a whole different track, you know what I mean? Whereas I think just for myself anyway, the reason why I make music is because I like the actual experience of making the music. You know, the playing the music live, the releasing the music, the posting it on Instagram. I could take or leave all that shit, man. I just like the actual experience of sitting down and making it. And in the last 2 years, I've enjoyed it more than ever, because I don't have as much time, you know. Like, I'm always trying to get my money up, and I have a 2-year-old baby, and I have many things to be doing. Trying to grow organic vegetables out here. So when I had a good potato harvest this year. It was really, really good. It was my first attempt, and it went really, really well, and I'd like to do it on a much bigger scale going forward. But you know, more than anything, it was just an experiment to be like, okay, well, you know, how capable am I? You know, it's like,
yeah, it's pretty easy to plant a few potatoes, but that being said, I'd say the average person, you never know, man. They probably
you know, the planting them part is easy, but then it's
where's the microwave?
The thing is that it's something that you even that as an experience, you know, it was like the planting them part that's easy, but it's like the maintenance after that, and then the being there to take care of them. You know, it's like it's easy to have a baby, but it's hard to, like, well, not that it's hard, but it's way more complicated to like look after them all the time than, you know, to have them. And growing food to me was the same.
Well,
that's what I'm saying. They're the same though. They're the same. They're the same.
Like,
you know, it's easy to make it happen, but then you're like, okay, well, I actually have a gang of shit on now. The next 2 weeks, I'm supposed to be in this place for a week, and then I'm supposed to be in this place for 6 days, and it's the middle of the summer. And if my potatoes don't get watered, then they're gonna fucking fall to shit. And if they fall to shit, then all the stuff I've planted around them is gonna fall to shit because they're gonna fall on them and start. Now, you see this is the train of thought that you're in when you're like, okay, I've got like 200 potatoes that are counting on me to survive. You know, it's like, you can't just start making like random plans. It's not like having a dog that you can bring with you. You know what I mean? Like one of those cool dogs that has a bandana instead of a collar and a person name. You can't just take them with you. You got to be around to do it, and you're like checking the weather. You know what I mean? You're checking the weather. You're doing all this shit that you never thought you'd be doing, and now I'm looking at doing it on a much bigger scale. And my plan is to just eventually kind of, you know, I don't want to be. I think the idea of being 100% self-sufficient is really fucking boring. You know.
And is it achievable too? Is it, you know, realistically on a level of, you'd be missing out on a certain level of comfort, that it's like how much do you have to put in just to kind of, you know, get central heating or fucking, you know, basic things like that you might think that you can do, but on a fucking fair level, you know, make the effort to do so. I would definitely
like 100% self-sufficient. It just, you're gonna be weird, and your kids are gonna be fucking weird, dude. You know what I mean? Let's keep it fucking real. You know what I mean? I'm like, you want to be able to fucking have a Domino's or like get the pop culture references from your time, or have access to the internet. But at the same time, it is very, very rewarding to be like, okay, for the next fucking 2 months, we don't have to buy potatoes. That was a fucking cool feeling, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's cool.
And being able to give them to your family and friends, you know, that is a cool feeling, to like really have made something that is actually tangible, you know, much like the records and the tapes and shit. It's like you could be blowing up on YouTube, and that's great, you know. But if you sold like 1 million records, do you know what I mean? The feeling of that and the way other people would perceive it as well is very much kind of the difference between, like, you know, I bought the same amount of potatoes. Like, nah, dude, I spent like fucking 3-4 months growing these motherfuckers, you know what I mean? And everybody I gave them to sent me a picture of when they were eating them and that shit, you know what I mean? So like, it does.
They just naturally taste nicer.
Yeah, like, because they know that I put the love into it, you know what I mean? So
I used to breed birds for years, like chickens and ducks and stuff like that. And that's the reason why I was going to bring them up, was because fucking the one time I tried to grow vegetables, they managed to bust over the fence and just tear the fucking thing apart when they were like only a month old or so. Like, but like I would have got the same feeling when I actually like got like males and females and different breeds and separated them, and then got them to fucking fertilize the eggs. And actually, like I had an incubator which was pretty solid for the eggs hatching. Like, obviously some wouldn't hatch, and the very odd chick or duckling would die. But it was only one time I actually managed to get like a duck to sit on. This duck had sat in these eggs for fucking months, and I knew that they were obviously not going to fucking hatch for some reason. But like, she was like, her fucking whole coat and whatever was going to shit because she'd been sitting on like 30 eggs for months waiting for them to hatch, and they should have hatched ages ago. But I took some other eggs from a different duck and put them under her at one point, and then literally like a week later I was just walking past and I see this like little yellow blob on the ground. I'm like, oh, that's a duckling. What the fuck? Where did that come from? And he was like half fucking dead, and I picked him up, and I just heard a lot of chirping inside, and I pulled up the duck, and it was like a fucking bunch of ducklings beneath her. I was like, fuck, this is lovely. And the other one had managed to survive then, and I had a pile of them, and fucking it was cool. Yeah, definitely to fucking raise them up and see them grow. And ducks are just great crack in general to watch, just fucking buzzing about their day. Like, I built a pond for them and all this stuff.
That's
like,
dope,
and it was
man.
fucking great fun. It'd be too hard to manage now, and especially because I went on to college then and stuff, I couldn't fucking look after them properly.
This is it.
So
you gotta be around, man.
I had to sell them off at one point. But as a teenager, it was definitely a fucking cool hobby, and a bit more obscure because it wasn't something that everyone was up to. Like, I was doing all the regular shit that people were doing as well, like, but I was like, fuck it, man, this is good crack. Like, me and my mates were doing it for years.
Well, that's it.
And but yeah, no, I agree what you're saying. I'd sell eggs as well, and they naturally just, people would say they taste fucking nicer because they're actually free range as opposed to the fucking ones in the shop. But in general, it's just kind of nicer to kind of get it from the actual source, literally, which is just over the fence or something like that.
Exactly, from someone that you know. So like, you know, let's say if you want to have like just enough potatoes for you and your household to eat, and you want to have enough eggs for everybody to eat, it's like, even if you just had like a couple ducks and you're just growing like a quarter acre of potatoes, like the amount of time that it takes to be there and like make that happen, it's like you can't really be doing.
Oh, it's a 9 to 5 job essentially.
Exactly.
Like,
so
think how much effort a dog takes, and it's like you like, okay, they're not as big as dogs, but like at one point at my peak I probably had about 100 birds. It's like, it's essentially 100 animals in my back garden that I need to fucking look after. So it wasn't a lot of the time I couldn't just leave the house. Like, I'd have to fucking stay there or have someone there to look after whatever duties I'd left over. Like,
yeah, so that's the thing, man, is that I think I would like to be like maybe 30 or 40% self-sufficient, you know, like maybe have most of my own vegetables and fruit, bar the exotic stuff, and you know, maybe have a couple of ducks and chickens. But after that, man, do you know what I mean, gotta eat Domino's once in a while, you know, gotta have the internet, you know what I mean. It's like, if you go fully off the grid, I think for what you gain,
you go a bit mad.
Yeah, what you gain by doing it, I think you can lose a lot of the other stuff. Like, I know that a lot of enlightened people don't like to engage in any low vibrations, so to speak. But I think that you need to have both. You know, you need to like definitely read some enlightened books, but also like go to a heavy metal gig and fucking get in the mosh pit. You know what I mean? I think there has to be a balance to that. I try to find that balance.
There's a healthy balance.
Yeah, like, I find it easy to find that balance in life, but I suppose I don't think about it enough, but that balance doesn't really seem to happen for me when I'm making rap music, which is why then I think I organically find myself like making other kinds of music. So like this tune that I'm going to put out next week, like I don't really remember making it, if I'm honest. I just finished work one day and I sat down, I just felt like making tunes, and I just sat down to make a tune, and I had this sample that I wanted to work with, and then, you know, I just happened to be here on my own that day. So 4 hours later I had the tune, and that was it. I didn't like put loads of thought into it or anything, but I think because
sometimes it just works like that.
Yeah, well, I think that day I was like saying a lot of shit that people didn't really agree with on the internet, and I was like reposting some of the spiciest things that I've said, because there was some other distractions.
I noticed. Yeah, I was paying attention to it. I just thought it was funny, but I was like,
sometimes there's some other, you know, whatever. There'll be some other distraction. You're like, did you hear the news today? And it's like, insert fucking pointless bullshit here, and me, like a fucking EJ, will react to it and start fucking calling everyone out on the internet. You know what I mean? I'm like, I can't believe I bought into that.
You're all bastards.
Yeah, and then I have to fucking cleanse my soul then by fucking making some like relaxing instrumental house music, because you know, that is the balance of like fucking kicking off online and then making some really relaxing music. I think is a good balance to have.
It's good to verge over into other genres. Like myself, like I'm literally have always just made rap and fucking recorded rap or written it fucking or produced the beats, but like I definitely want to cross over into kind of like, say, the Prodigy kind of territory, where it's dancey but it's still like heavily based on samples and stuff, but it's just kind of like I'm so actively making music the whole time. It's actually like I want to kind of be at a kind of satisfactory level where I can really like relax for like a year or something like that and just focus on something else, which would be a Prodigy kind of project. Or I'm into like video game music and stuff like that as well. Like, so if I could ever get a fucking secondary job making fucking tunes for games and stuff like that,
very cool.
I fucking love doing that, I'd say. And I think when you've fucking played as much fucking video games as I have, then you kind of have a certain mindset for it, where it's like, you know what works. Like this, just I'd make something and be like, this sounds like something from a fucking, I don't know, Super Nintendo platformer game or some shit like that. I kind of have that kind of level of nerdiness inside of me, I guess.
Yeah.
But I haven't put enough effort into it either, because as I said, I'm actively making music. I feel like I'm kind of wasting time like practicing something else that, like, it's kind of the difference in skill level is so ginormous, where it's like I can put together a decent rap beat in 5 minutes, whereas like trying to make something that's a completely different genre, speed and sounds and all this shit, it's like, I guess when you're so used to being, you know, relatively skillful at your craft, having to start again at something for me is kind of like, oh fuck, like it's like I forgot what it was like to be shit at something, like in regards to music, because I was only doing two things pretty much since I started off. So like that's kind of almost it's a stupid excuse, definitely, but like it's a demotivator in a sense, where it's like I feel like, oh, this is just basically a faster rap beat, I can, you know, pick this up no hassle, and it's like, this sounds shite, like this is gonna take a few fucking months probably, but I'll get around to it. Like I don't tend to put stuff off too much.
Not at all, bro.
You know, I agree with what you're saying. It's definitely a healthy thing to do.
I totally relate to that. Not so much creatively, because I think I've been very gifted to, like, as soon as I try to do something creative, it's like I in a way kind of go into a trance. Like all my creative stuff very much feels like it comes from an external place rather than an internal place. So like, you know, that's why I'm not precious with my shit. It just seems to like come, and I don't put as I don't put that much thought behind any creative thing that I do. But what I do,
bit of natural talent, like I think that's something that I kind of lacked. I just to put a couple more extra years to get to a certain level. Just for me, like it boggled the mind at first, like a lot of that production stuff.
No, but that
etc.
no, but that train of thought of like not wanting to do something because you're gonna be shit at it when you're already good at something else. Like that even as a phrase that sums up my last 2 years professionally, like not creatively. Do you know, like I spent like over 20 years getting good at music, getting good at working in bars, getting good at events and everything to do with nightlife, and then it just didn't exist out of nowhere. So I had to fucking go get a job in a warehouse that I didn't want to work in, and you know, be taking orders from somebody like who doesn't respect me because they don't get that I'm actually, you know, I would actually be, say, I don't know, I'd be at a relatively high skill level, say working in a bar or DJing or anything to do with nightlife or running an event, but in a fucking warehouse I've got like average skill. Do you know what I mean? Because this dude has been working here for 20 years while I was doing something else, so everything I'd ever been good at was like taken away from me, and it is a real demotivator to like be trying to start something that you're not naturally good at, you know. So it's a nice idea.
No, I see that. Yeah,
it's a nice idea to sit down and like make experimental music, but like, you know, when you've been doing something else for so long, it can be daunting to, like, you know, even whether it's like a video game or a sport, you know what I mean? You're like, oh, I'd love to do that, but I know I'm going to be shit at it, so I'm just going to keep doing the thing that I'm good at. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, in the end, there's plenty of people who don't have even one thing that they're kind of good at. So it's kind of like I'm happy out that I've got at least one or two things that I'm pretty decent at doing. Do you know what I mean? Rather than just kind of going about moseying about the mundane kind of lifestyle, I guess, you know. And it doesn't even have to be another genre of music. Like, it would just be something creative. Like, I've always kind of been into film and stuff like that. So I've did bits and pieces of acting over the years, but like recently, like, I've just had a good few offers from people to star and shit. Like, so I did fucking a couple of different things over the last year. Most of it just college projects and stuff like that for people, helping them out and stuff. But one, my mate wrote and directed. I won't give too much details out about it because the trailer's been released and all that stuff, so it's not a case that I'm revealing anything. But I try not to spoil the story or anything like that. But yeah, it's kind of just a little small kind of crime drama or whatever. And one of the guys that was acting in it, Zeph Lawless, who'd be like, he's been around for a good few years. He knew where to basically send it around, like in terms of like festivals and stuff like that. And of course we got ignored by all the Irish ones, but then fucking it went through like the Berlin Film Festival and it like got an award and shit like this, and it's been shown around Europe, man. Apparently, you know, and all this stuff, like, and like, while, like, not to shit in it in any way, like, I thought it was good, like, and it was definitely the best thing I've ever been in by miles, but I was like, was it gonna go that far? I wouldn't have expected it. Like, that's not to talk it down in any way. Like, it's a solid flick, like, small couple of minutes, only about like 10 minutes long or something like that. Can't remember, it's been a good while since I've seen it, but yeah, like, that was a crazy thing to do. So like, I wasn't just doing that to fucking lick my arse too much, but like, I was just saying, like, you know, you can fucking put your motives towards something else creative. It doesn't have to necessarily be music related, because it's kind of, you know what I mean, usually if you enjoy music, you'll enjoy fucking acting in a movie or some other form of art.
Yeah,
like,
but I think these things are most easy to achieve when you're collaborating, and that is something that I've had the pleasure of doing a lot lately, is collaborating with other musicians and artists that for the most part make or approach art in a completely different way to me. You know, all of these projects are still in transition, so I'm reluctant to say too much about them, but like, you know, from dance to other vocalists, to folks that are like mostly focused on the recording and the mixing, you know, and I've had a chance to now link up with some really, really skilled musicians that I never thought I would have the chance to link up with. So I found collaboration, especially now, like in lieu of being able to play loads of gigs or, you know, be at festivals and do stuff like that, collaboration has really been the saving grace for me in the last 6 months in particular.
Yeah.
And I've noticed
you do a lot of stuff with Seahai, don't
myself
you?
and Seahai do a lot together. Yeah, we actually just got back from the UK there the other day. We went to,
I saw, yeah, that was fucking cool, man.
We went to the UK and went busking for a week, and it was really dope. Fair play to all the homies in the UK that came out, and so many people came out, man. Not just putting money in the hat when we were busking and shit, but like everywhere we went, people offered us other opportunities to do things. Do you know? It was really, really good, man. We're only out like a half an hour, and already somebody asked us, said, "Oh, this is really cool what you're doing. Can we interview you?" We were like, "Yeah." We thought they'd, take out a phone or take out a dictaphone or something. They were like, "Yeah, so meet us up here in this place." We were like, "All right, cool."
Excuse me.
So we went busking for a while, and then we went up to this place, and it was like a proper studio, man, like a proper studio with a green screen. I was like, "What the fuck?"
Oh yeah,
dude?
you went to a studio. Yeah, I wasn't
So
sure
what
why.
the fuck is going on? And it was really cool. This really, really lovely lady, Izzy, interviewed us. She was super cool, but like the setup was just so professional. It was in one of the universities, but it was like a legit TV studio on a really, really small scale.
That's sick, man.
And
right place at the
but
right
this
time.
is it, and things akin to that just always seem to happen to us, no matter where we show up. We met some really, really cool people in Manchester, and we got a few projects coming up with some of the folks that we met there. Again, I'm reluctant to say too much before they actually come to fruition, but everywhere we went,
as you should always do.
but this is it. And Richie from Irish and Jamaican, he saw we were in the UK, and he hollered at us to come down to London and jump on a cypher, which we did. I don't know when that track will be out, but it was really, really nice to feel. It was nice, and albeit a little ironic, to like go to the UK in search of creative freedom from Ireland, and everybody.
Yeah, that is.
It was pretty weird, man, and everybody was so welcoming, and everybody supported us so much, and everybody was so saddened to hear that we couldn't play music at home for whatever reason. But yeah, it was great, man.
It's fucked up.
It was really good. But me and T.I. have, I don't know, we kind of throw caution to the wind, If we have an idea for a song, then we just write it and we don't think about it too much. Or if we decide that, you can't do shit in Ireland, it's a dystopian hellscape, we're like, hey, let's go see what's going on in England, and we just go and do it. You know what I mean? We're not really kind of theory guys. We're more practical kind of dudes. You know what I mean?
I get you. C-High is a sick performer, man. He messaged me, I'd say about 2-3 years ago, saying that he'd like to jump on one of my DJ Green albums, and he got a tune on the last one I released there in like 2020, I think. I saw him perform at I can't remember the name of the place. Gigi Karma and Edgy V were it was their gig.
Right.
Like I think it was their album release or something like that.
Oh,
and he was supporting, and fucking like he was, definitely the best performer there in my opinion. Like just fucking absolutely sick.
Yeah, he's telling the truth. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's the most thing that I want from anybody that I make music with in particular. Like I need them to be telling the truth, and fair play to C-High. He's always fucking telling the truth. It's not necessarily an easy thing to do these days.
No.
But I think
the truth hurts.
It does. Well, it can. It just depends. Like,
it can,
if you're living a righteous life, or you really believe in what you're doing and saying, then you're nothing to fucking worry about. But I would encourage people to collaborate, and in particular attempt to like collaborate with strangers. Like, I've collaborated with people that I've never met that live in the States and live in mainland Europe.
Same as.
And it's just, that's really, really magic stuff. Of course, definitely collaborate with people in Ireland as well, as much as you can, but just keep an open mind to collaborating with everybody. Collaborating, like,
I did a full album with an Australian rapper there. Actually, it was the first thing I ever
that's
produced,
dope.
because no one in Ireland would fucking work with me. And it wasn't that I was shit. I was solid at that point. Like, this is probably about 2015, 2016, and he just contacted me randomly on YouTube saying like, oh, you like this beat? And I was like, oh yeah. I was like, he's like, can I spit a tune over it? I was like, sure, yeah. And he did that, and then I was like, here, man, look, I'm not doing nothing else. Like, I'll do a fucking album with you, like, and because he's fucking sick, like, and like did a full album, 15 tracks, released it a couple of months later, dope, like, man. And after that, then like it definitely opened up a couple of doors for me, like.
That's dope. I think sometimes
that's probably my biggest overseas, like, kind of in terms of like size. Mm-hmm. Biggest overseas kind of production kind of credit, I guess.
Well, I think everybody like everybody has the internet in their pocket the whole time, so everyone's kind of living in a little echo chamber. And if you can break through that, like most of the collaboration that I've been doing in the last 6 months has been in person with people, you know, like going to a place and playing music together.
It's definitely my preference as well.
Definitely, man, especially now, you know, when we've been so limited to what we can and can't do. I've been really, really grateful to like actually be able to meet up with people and also be making other kinds of music. I really do like when I can make music and I don't have to actually say anything. I fucking love that, man.
It's a handy bonus.
It's so good. Like I don't know. I've spent so many years mostly saying things. Like in the main music that I release to the world or the things I'm involved in, I'm generally saying something. And I've got a couple of projects now on the go where I'm actually just producing everything and I don't have to say much, or I'm just playing keys on a track or whatever it is. And that's been really, really refreshing. It's been really, really good for me. I think quiet time is good, especially as like any kind of vocalist. I think you should definitely try to explore other ways of making music, so that I think as well it's helped me keep like stay fresh with ideas, you know. Like I'm not.
It's handy too when a rapper's in tune with the producer. Like you don't have to explain everything in baby terms. You know what I mean? You can just be like, and they can literally do it themselves. Do you know what I mean? It's handier to kind of be dipping in like both ponds, I guess. Especially from like most producers can figure out a lot of rapper stuff, not to toot our own or horn or fucking horns too much, but like, you know, not to shit on any rappers, but like a lot of them, you know, they wouldn't know fuck all about the production side of things, and it does speed the process up for them as much as it speeds it up for me. Where if you know the stuff, like it's much handier, because sometimes like just, you know, their description of something could mean a million things. Like I had one guy ages ago say like, mix that up there. And I was
what
like,
does that even mean?
Do you mean to like mix the track, like the bass, the kicks and the snares, or like mix it like with a fucking turntable, or like chop the track up and like mix it up around? And he was kind of like, I don't know, just mix it up or something. You know what I mean? Like, so I was kind of like, do you know what I mean? It would be handier, man. I have a book here if you want to read it, but I guess that seems a bit dickheadish. Like, if you want to come back here, study fucking pages 1 to 10, or don't come back again. Like,
fuck's sake, man. Yeah, sometimes I think it can go either way. Either, you know, someone might not have enough knowledge of the terminology, or they might focus too much on the terminology. I think being somewhere in the middle is probably where you want to be at.
Yeah, you don't want to be too anal about it, like.
Definitely.
Just know what a fucking reverb is, you know what I mean? Know the difference between like a kick and a snare or something, like, you know? It's handy to know.
Yeah, I don't know, I suppose I've just been very fortunate to like, when I started making music, like I didn't have the internet when I started making music. I just had like the most rudimentary software on like Windows 95 fucking desktop. So I just started making music. But at this point, I don't know, I was 17, maybe 18. Like I was like listening to random country music and like Square Pusher and fucking jazz and heavy metal, and just listening to loads of random different kinds of music, and then just trying to figure out what everything did in the basic software that I was using. And it wasn't until much later when I started really pursuing making electronic music that I started learning the sacred mathematics to it and learning the terminology. You know, I think a lot of people are missing out.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are missing out on that first part where you're just alone with the thing, trying to figure it out, and there's no pressure, and you're just making whatever. Because I think I actually learned more by doing that than I ever learned from looking at tutorials and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Definitely. That's how I started off with Audacity. Like there was about a year there of just fucking around with it, and for me, like, you know, I was like 16, so I was like, YouTube. You look up funny fucking stupid videos on YouTube. There's no such thing as music tutorials, like, you know what I mean? So as far as I was concerned, that didn't exist. So I just had to fucking use the most basic DAW I think that you can find, really. Like, it's free online, and just fuck with that.
It's not handy though. Audacity's not handy at all, bro.
No, it's not. Well, for some people, man, I know guys who produce with it, and the beats they make on it's like, how the fuck did you make that on Audacity? Like, or some people who just like to use it to record their tracks and everything, and I'm like, yeah, no, I definitely don't want to go back to it like that. But fucking, obviously picking up FL Studio and stuff like, and when I went to college as well, obviously they taught me to use a few DAWs there, but like FL Studio then became my preference, like. But yeah, like it definitely was. It's, you know, if I have a problem now, I can just, there's so many people I know that I can text, like, have you ever experienced this in FL Studio or some shit, or there's Reddit or there's Facebook or there's, you know, you can message anyone or look up a tutorial. Whereas back then didn't know anyone that did this shit, and didn't know you could even look this stuff on YouTube. So it was like trial and error, and I was like learning about, you know, stuff that fucking I didn't know what the fuck a reverb was or distortion or any of that stuff, like. So I actually had to learn without being told. It's kind of a lot more confusing, and like I definitely didn't make any good beats back then. I never trying very hard, but I couldn't even figure out like looping, you know what I mean? Like, how do you actually get a drum to loop properly, or fucking a piano sample or something like that? So what I used to do is just get fucking a 2-back beat or something like that and stick a big L fucking a cappella over it, and I'd be like, so I've actually gone back and listened to some of them, and some of them actually were very solid, like, whereas there's a couple that are absolutely fucking awful. But like in some cases, like, it was kind of, you could hear a beat and you could hear fucking the vocals on another song. It's like, that beat kind of seems like it would work for that tune. Like, I had like I was one of his you know, Life's a Bitch by Nas, and the beat was Still, you know, Ghetto Boys, the one that's in Office Space. It was that, and like I just threw them on and it fucking worked perfectly, like. And I was like, how the fuck, like, it's like, I felt kind of like you're kind of learning something here. Like, that wasn't too easy to do. Like, you know, the fact that you could just analyze both of these two things and think, oh, that would probably work. And that was definitely, I'd say even that was a little bit of a defining moment where I was like, oh, you know, you actually might get good at this. Now, something like that now, I wouldn't look back and be like, whoa, that's fucking amazing. But for the time, if you saw, like, how much I was just scratching my arse in front of Audacity and be like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, you think like, oh, that's, you know, a decent achievement to be completely stupefied in terms of that stuff, because I hadn't a fucking clue how to do any of it.
Well, like you said, a certain amount of ignorance is bliss. I actually experienced this yesterday afternoon. I managed to have like a spare 40 minutes and I said, I'm gonna make a beat, and then I almost stopped myself because my keyboard and my keyboard and my MIDI mixer, and basically most of my tools that I use for making music are in a rehearsal space that I use in Dublin for another project with a friend of mine. So I almost didn't start making a beat because I didn't have that shit. Do you know what I mean? And I just stopped myself and was like, hang on a second, I could definitely just make a beat on Ableton without, like, I don't need any of the stuff. Like, I know how to do it. Like,
you can usually use the actual like computer keyboard as a keyboard as well. I use
exactly,
that
yeah.
Like, just all the letters are basically
there's
keys,
a lot of ways to do it, and like I know all the mathematics of, like, if I think a beat in my head, I know what it should look like on the grid. But it was just,
you can literally draw it in tune out
exactly.
As well, like.
But you do get to a place where you kind of think that, like, oh well, if you don't have the exact stuff that you want to use to make music, that you can't make music. Whereas when you start out, you don't know anything, so you're kind of free from that. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're not inhibited by like, oh well, I shouldn't do that, and you can't do this, and I don't have that. You're just like, oh, I really love music, I want to try and make that shit. Do you know what I mean? I think it's
didn't have an interface back then.
Yeah, you didn't have shit, bro.
You know, a couple of MIDI controllers and stuff like that. I had a fucking shitty Windows like 98 fucking computer that I was messing around on with a Windows 95 microphone, like. And like, this was in like this was the fucking mid 10s, like, this is like 2012, 2013, like. Yeah. But fucking, I had great fun with it, like. It's like, you know what I mean? Obviously having the better computer and all the better equipment is fucking handy out, but like, you don't really need that shit, like, until you're gonna go at least release stuff. Do you know what I mean? I think I would recommend getting better equipment just for overall execution and stuff like that. But at the start, all you really need is a fucking computer. You can do it on your phone nowadays too. Like, I personally wouldn't, because I hate to be staring at just a small screen trying to do that shit. But some people have shown me beats they made on their fucking phone. I'm like, Jesus Christ, like, that's sick. Like, it's like, I'd find it hard to make that on a computer.
Yeah,
like.
I've heard some sick beats made on phones recently. It like, that's it. It's like whatever tools you have, whatever way you can access like the medium to make it. If you want to make it bad enough, you're gonna figure it out. You know what I mean? Like, Greg Wilson was DJing on reel-to-reel tapes in the late 70s and early 80s and shit. You know what I mean? Like, cutting tapes and marking them with tapes so that he knew where to fucking mix in and shit. Whereas now, like, I've seen people struggle to mix on like the newest CDJs. You know what I mean? So I don't think it matters what equipment you have, but it's more about how badly you want it, you know?
Yeah. Or like, if you don't know it, you'll fucking learn it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
trial and error, man. Like, you know, I think sometimes you can have your handheld like too much. Like, there'll be times when I'm trying to execute something, and I'm like, you know, it might be something completely new to me, or something that I might have done before, and I just can't remember how I did it. And I'm about to open YouTube and, you know, start asking the internet. But generally try to not do that and try to go back and figure out how the fuck I do this. You know, it's often I will cave and look it up, but generally I try to like figure it out on my own. When I'm making beats, I always turn the laptop into airplane mode, so I'm like not tempted to like
don't rely on it basically.
Exactly,
like, because I mean we figured stuff out for ourselves plenty as kids, you know. It's like, don't fucking grab the electric fence, don't fucking play with knives, and I firsthand learned many of those stupid lessons. But yeah, it's kind of similar to that, like, you know what I mean?
And at the same time,
you were a kid and you were stupider and you didn't have access to fucking YouTube to go, should I fucking set this on fire? No. But as an adult then, like, where you're hopefully a lot smarter than when you were 8, you should well not have to fucking constantly look up YouTube or Google to do everything. And you'd be surprised, some people have no fucking space in their head to actually like fucking store all this information, as opposed to having it there on your phone, like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think, you know, again, it's just about how you use it. So like, I personally, I'm not into the concept of Splice. I only like heard about Splice in the last year or something, and I don't like it as a concept, because I like to go on the
liquefies things.
Yeah, like I'd rather go on the journey myself. But at the same time, if I'm making a beat and I'm like, oh man, this could really deal with like, I don't know, some like Latin American congas. Like, you don't have to use Splice and shit. Like, you can just go like, you have the internet. You can definitely find some like nice crisp Latin American live congas from like whatever, the late 60s, and acquire that shit and put it into
a playlist on YouTube with that specific.
You'll find it somewhere, you know what I mean? So I think, to me anyway, I just don't really see the purpose for things like Splice when like you already have the internet. Like, how, like, well, what's the next stage of Splice? Is like where, you know, you pay a little bit extra and like a producer comes around to your house and does it for you. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
I mean, you can essentially buy full tracks. Like, I mean, I bought things off it before years ago. Like, and I found like there's like 4 layers of samples, and like I was like, if I put all 4 together, I had a full beat made. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, that defeats the purpose. Like, so like, I definitely like the whole even just if I'm just looking through a YouTube playlist, I'll just pick out like 50 random ones, and I always pick it by the artwork if I like the artwork, and then check them out. And usually I'll probably only find like 2 or 3 things I like, but I like at least doing that, just flicking through, and like I usually know within a second, like
in a split second, bro.
I don't know what I'm looking for, but I know
You'll
what I
know
don't
when
want.
you hear it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I've said this before, saxophone samples for me are ruined, because you know that whole era of like techno where it was constantly fucking saxophones.
Yeah,
and
it goes
shit,
through phases, man.
and I just hear people blaring that stuff the whole time. So now even if it's a nice jazz fucking saxophone sample, I'm just like, nah, I don't want any saxophones. I just don't know why, it's been fucking ruined for me. But mostly just really obscure kind of shit, or stuff that just sets a vibe, like any kind of Asian style shit, you know what I mean? Like puts you in fucking samurai mode or something like that. I just like anything that's really obscure or fucking kind of what's the best word is, like exotic and foreign, you know what I mean, Italian or Brazilian or stuff like that, where you can really kind of, you know, not tell a story, but it gives me at least a visualization when that's why I'll name the beat. If I name the beat fucking Dragon Frog, it's because I was thinking of fucking dragon frogs when I was fucking making this beat, like, you know what I mean? Same with AK-47. Obviously this is fucking about, you know, shooting people out the window or something, like, so
yeah,
there is that side to it.
You can sense like a general idea of what the project should be called before you're like, right, I'm gonna close this now, I have to save it, what the fuck am I gonna call it? You know, it's giving off a vibe, you know. But I do kind of fear that like the art of sampling, like I don't see it as present in in rap music. And I know a lot of that has to do with copyright, because everybody's like, oh well, if I sample this shit, then, you know, I can't get.
The laws were way softer back in the 80s and 90s, I think, with hip hop. A lot of cases, because you think about it, like some of the fucking ones that they've sampled over and over and over again, it's like, surely that guy's super rich, like, and either they didn't see it or just kind of, you know, I don't know. In my opinion, it was like they must have got the blessing, I'd say, in a lot of cases, like, but it was of my opinion that a lot of the black artists from the 70s and 80s and 60s that they were sampling primarily, like, at least in that era, didn't own their masters in a lot of cases. So it's kind of like, it wouldn't be a case of like, oh, like, you know, you're a young budding artist and you're fucking making good music, yeah, sure, you can sample my song, like, but it's kind of like they probably didn't have the ability to do so. Like, it's kind of, because even then, why weren't all these guys getting massively sued? Like, for the most part, like, there's only a couple of stories out there I know of hip hop where it was like a big fucking deal that they sampled this tune or whatever, you know, like the fucking Drake Hotline Bling one or whatever, and there's a couple of others over the years. So it's kind of like, how did that just go completely kind of ignored. Like, I've sampled so much shit, but I see it's, for me, it's, I'm not at a level where it's going
Exactly.
to be noticed. Like, or they might notice, but it's like, okay, well, I'm going to wait till that gets fucking potentially 1 million streams. Like, we're like, where's my money?
Mhm.
Like, but it's definitely, it's a wonder how they got away with that for so long. Because I mean, it hip hop was fucking, when you think about it, 100% sample based for the most part. Like, it wasn't until probably the last maybe 20 years or so where you can tell, like, there's just that kind of, I don't know, it's like a little bit of a digital sound to it, I guess, where it's like, okay, that's definitely something that was made in FL Studio or whatever with no fucking samples. Doesn't have that kind of vintage crisp to it, I guess, that they naturally kind of have.
Yeah, like everything DJ
when there's they're using samples.
everything DJ Premier made, like that I was fucking with, like the whole way from whatever.
Best producer of all time,
I would concur with that. He's at the very least in the conversation, but I would concur with that. I'm here for DJ Premier, man. I love everything that he does. But like
he's lasted the longest as well, in fairness. 80s, 90s, 2000s and 10s, probably the only guy whose sound has remained beloved. It is essentially the best hip hop sound. It's the one that people love the most. That just crisp, old style boom bap. Like, he realistically, you know, it is literally the fucking sound that people universally love the most as artists. There's not a lot of people that will turn around and say, you know, I don't fuck with Premier's sound, or at least producers that kind of mimic that, I guess. Like, and essentially, in the 90s at least, all of your favorite East Coast tunes, probably outside of Wu-Tang, were produced by him. Like, I didn't realize until I went over the production credits for like Jay-Z and Nas and Biggie and all this shit. I was like, fuck,
J. Rue the Damager, everybody.
One of my favorite songs was produced by him,
man.
Like, fucking genius.
He's the dude, but and that's the difference between like his shit and the modern like rap music that I hear. The modern stuff is all like 100% electronic. Like, I'm very aware that somebody made this in, like you said, Ableton, Fruity Loops, Pro Tools, whatever. Like, there
ain't many producers I can name, you know, that are from the modern era.
Yeah, I don't hear a lot of samples. I mean, there are exceptions like Pitch 92 and a lot of these cats that work with High Focus.
UK is definitely primarily boom bap. That's the thing. It's strange like that. The trap in the UK doesn't really seem to be nearly as big as, say, Split Profits, High Focus, all that shit. So they're very lucky to kind of taken the helm there and kept that sound at the helm pretty much. I know a few of them have done tunes with Premier as well.
They have, 4Ls have, but I think that the reason for that is that, and this is only my speculation, is that you've got a lot of like older people that listen to hip hop in the UK, so you not only have a bigger population, but like hip hop was happening over there way before it was happening over here. Do you know what I mean? So a lot of the cats that would be like my age, a lot of the dudes in High Focus would be around my age, you know, like in their 30s and 40s. They came up listening to Gangstar and stuff like that. So I think that's how that sound is like really ingrained into what they do. And there's enough people that came up in that time listening to that music that they still want to hear that sound, and they have no interest in listening to grime or drill or trap, you know. Whereas I think in Ireland it's a much younger audience listening to any kind of rap music. So I think that's why
you're right there.
Drill and trap then I think they have a lot more influence over here, because the average age of the person listening to it is younger, I think. But again, that's only my speculation. I personally don't really fall into any category, so it doesn't fucking make much difference to me.
I'd say you're right. Like, I mean, there isn't many lads I know, whether they're rappers or not, that are into the stuff that I'd be into, and there's only like a 5-year gap between us, maybe 5-6 years. You know, they don't listen to kind of any of the old school stuff or any of the stuff that I think would be some of the best shit in the country. It's all kind of drillish stuff, or it's pretty much all drill, really. Like, I mean, there's not really a whole lot of Irish trap. I guess it's still kind of a thing that didn't really take, you know, come into fruition. Like, some people have experimented, like I did. My last fucking EP was all trap, like, but less of the kind of, you know, mumble rap future type shit, and more like, say, like Devilish Trio or kind of Suicide Boys or stuff like that, I guess, if that's any similarity, a bit more on the dark side. But like, outside of that, like, I'd only know a couple of guys who've kind of done a few trap beats here and there, or maybe a trap project, but it never really seemed to take over. Like, the drill scene completely fucking took over. Like,
well, I do think that, and I said this like 20 years ago, and I'm guilty of it myself, but like, Irish hip hop doesn't have a sound, you know, and I think that's why it's a tough one to export, because it's hard to tell people what it is when it doesn't have a defined sound. I mean, that's also the thing that
so much different shit being made.
That's also the thing that makes it brilliant, you know. But you can't export it if it's not defined. So there is no sound for Irish hip hop. Maybe that will change in the future, but think most of the sounds like that we hear, they're adopted, you know, from either UK scenes or American scenes. But like, you know, for myself personally, for any of the beats that I've made myself, you can you can hear in the beats that I make that I come from a background in mostly producing house music. Do you know what I mean? Like the actual beats that I've made, a lot of the stuff I've put out was produced by Odd Numbers, but the actual beats that I've made myself, I don't think they fall into any of those categories. So I'm very much on the outside looking in at like all of these things objectively. I find it deeply interesting, because I'm just making some total other shit, you know, and it doesn't really fit in with any of it. But I am really curious to see where it's going, and I love to hear a new sound. But admittedly, it's been a while since, like, you know, I heard anything that was like exceptionally different here in Ireland, you know. And obviously I'm not tuned into the scene, but like people do show me things, and I hear a lot of borrowed sounds, you know. So I was so happy to. Sorry, go ahead.
If you're going to check out anyone that's different, I'd recommend Arcane Sucks. He was the guy that I had in the previous episode, and I was saying to him himself, like, he is probably the most unique guy. He's living in the UK now, but he's Irish, like, and grew up here and all that. But yeah, just very, very unique. I'd recommend just that one guy. I'll give him a check him out, and I'd be surprised if you can compare him to anyone at all. Like, I think there's a bit of influence in everyone, no matter how good you are. It's like you can hear bits and pieces of someone, but with him it's kind of like, I don't know who he sounds like, just himself, and his style is just very unique.
I think that's definitely what Ireland needs, you know. The last like rap music project that I managed to bring to fruition was myself and C-High and Odd Numbers revisiting a track that we made a couple of years ago. That the whole premise of the track was born out of the fact that myself and C-High both enjoy Mortal Kombat. You know, that's the basic premise for it. But like, you know, it's very rare that you hear. I mean, I know it did get categorized as horrorcore or whatever. I mean, we're talking about the same shit that we always talk about, kind of. But like, it's definitely, I don't know, it's got a spooky theme to it. You know what I mean? And I feel that a lot of contemporary rappers in Ireland, the UK, or elsewhere take themselves too seriously to like make gimmicked or themed music. Do you know what I mean? As if like, oh, it won't be credible if it's not 100% real. Like, obviously I didn't just come back from the dead. Do you know what I mean? I said it in the song. I said it in the song, and you see it in the video. But I obviously didn't just come back from the dead. It's a fucking metaphor. I mean, I'm not gonna fucking start breaking down the lyrics and explaining them. But like, you know, I think
this fella thinks he's Tupac, man. Thinks he's come back from the dead.
I think he can supersede.
I'd love to meet the stupid bastard who takes that from a song like that. You know what I mean? There definitely is some culture out there that would hear that, like, what the fuck's he on about, man?
It's less about like whether or not it's literal, and it's more like, you know, your credibility can be superseded by your creativity. You know, so it's just more interesting to write that song than to, I don't know, write a song that's bigging myself up. Do you know what I mean? I'm not really into that.
Yeah, that's the for me myself. If I'm bigging myself up, it's more so the character that my fucking rap persona is. Attention, like I've definitely, because I wore the mask from the beginning when I fucking started it out, that he is more of a character.
Life. Yeah, I get you, man.
So like, if I'm bigging myself up, I'm bigging up him as a character, as opposed to myself saying I'm the coolest, best, fucking strongest, sexiest man in the world. Like, it's not me talking, it's him. Like, so you can't blame me for anything he fucking says.
Love it, man. That's brilliant. That's like the Hulk Hogan approach. You know what I mean? It's like Hulk Hogan got away in court by saying that shit. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's fucking dope, man. That's dope.
Sam, and look, we clocked in 2 hours there, so I'd say we'll wrap it up. It was a pleasure talking to you again. I could talk to you for another 2 hours easily
pleasure,
again, man. We managed to probably top the last episode in a good few sections, to be honest. So I'm happy out with the final result. I hope that doesn't happen again, though.
I've got everything here in front of me, bro. I could see it, yo.
Yeah, no, I stopped and started a few times. So at least if this part's gone, the fucking first hour and a half is still there. So.
An absolute pleasure, man.
All right, man.
Thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it.
No hassle, man.
I think having any kind of dialogue with the artists can only be good for the artists and the people that want to experience the art. So thanks so much for having me, and I appreciate anybody that listens.
Definitely, man. Cool. All right, I'll chat to you soon, man.